Hello, you are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. This is number 78. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
We are two rugby fans from Leinster and Ireland, and we look at all things rugby, and as such we have a very, very good show in store, a jam-packed show because it's going to be a busy weekend. For all those returning, welcome back. If it's your first time here, very welcome. Yes, we're going to be getting into the meat of all things rugby. It's kind of starting up all over the globe again, but what's really exciting is international rugby, so that's going to be at the top of our show. We're going to start off with the All Blacks facing Australia in Bledisloe 1. Exciting game, that, obviously.
Truly.
Then we will move on as the South African teams are returning. They have their domestic competition, which is getting underway this weekend. It's going to be Super Rugby Unlocked, I believe it's called.
That's right.
Super Rugby South Africa is essentially what it is.
Yes.
So we're going to be taking a broad look at where those teams stand, looking back on the gold v green game from the weekend as well, and just kind of teeing up that as their season gets underway as well. Then we're going to take a look at the English Premiership, the Gallagher Premiership. Just as we shoot today, they have finalised the semi-finals. We'll talk a bit about the controversy surrounding that as well. We'll get into both of those fixtures and do a detailed preview. Then we're going to take a look at some of the other domestic rugby and some fixtures that we're excited about over the coming weekend as well, because there are some juicy ones. And then we will get into the big news that the South African teams have elected to join the Pro 14, making it probably the Pro 16 from next year.
Season, yes.
So that's obviously very exciting and has lots of ramifications, and we'll go into detail and in depth into that, as well as then looking at some of the other news from the rugby world this week. So yeah, a fairly stacked show.
I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, it's very good to be back doing this. It's an exciting time. You know, we're chock-a-block full of domestic rugby, and there's still plenty of domestic stuff to go on. Last season is only wrapping up. There's still a European final to come. But the real meat of rugby, and this is a strange one to say, we love domestic rugby. It's the source of most of our joy as fans, as Leinster and Ireland fans. It's a roller coaster from Test rugby to club rugby sometimes, and as much as we love it and enjoy it, Test rugby is really where it's at. And this is where, in the next couple of months now, we're going to have, after all the horrors of the year that's been, we're going to have some very, very exciting matchups. And the World Cup cycle for 2023 is getting underway, and we're going to see all these teams playing next week. There's matches starting in South America. Uruguay, I believe, are playing. Brazil, I believe, are playing. It's going to ramp up. Georgia have a game against Scotland. The Six Nations has to wrap up. The Rugby Championship is going to start. Yeah. There's got to be this great autumn series, and I'm buzzing for it, and we're going to be with you right the way, because Test Rugby's back. It's like it's been a long, miserable year, but now we have Test rugby on our shores again, and there's good matches with good stakes. So I'm really buzzing for this one.
Yes, and we're buzzing to be breaking some of this down as well. So if you're new here, or if you're just joining us, please do feel free to like, subscribe. We go through all the rugby from a fan's point of view, but we try and break it down as best we can as well. So if you're into that, click the bell. You'll be notified about when we drop new videos. So without further ado, we are going to get straight into the meat of it, which is, to start with, it's Test rugby. We're going to have the All Blacks v Australia. Bledisloe 1.
Bledisloe 1.
It's an exciting fixture. It's going to be at Sky Stadium, aka the Cake Tin, and your favourite place in the world.
God, I think it's an awful stadium, I must say.
But it's going to be
not just because Ireland were pumped there in the World Cup quarter final back in 2011.
Yeah, it's just a bit big.
I never liked it. Don't think there's a great atmosphere in there, and the wind is hard. It's a cricket ground. I don't love cricket grounds as rugby grounds.
Yeah.
And you know what? The All Blacks don't have nearly as good a record there as they do in Eden Park. So I think there's something to it.
That's probably, food for thought, because the Aussies will definitely fancy their chances going down there. It's going to take place on Sunday morning. That's 4 p.m. BST, which
British time.
That's our time.
For our time, we're 4 a.m. in the morning, which I guess is mid-afternoon over in New Zealand on Sunday, which is not the kindest of time slots. But listen, we'll find a way to watch it. And
for sure.
Through thick or thin, we'll be watching that one.
Absolutely. And like the ref and teams are to be confirmed yet as we shoot this. We haven't got them just yet, but there's kind of more important things, because this is their first fixture for them of the whole calendar year, and both under new coaching tickets as well. So it's very fresh.
It's definitely it's a whole new look, and it's for Australia in particular have gone with a raft of new players in their squad. I think 16 new players were announced in their original 40 man squad. So there's going to be a lot of new faces, a lot of fresh blood, a lot of guys in the team who haven't had the sort of horrific recent memory of being pumped by New Zealand. I mean, that's one of the other dynamics. I mean, I was reading up on this pre-match, and I think there was a stat that New Zealand, in terms of Bledisloe dominance in the last World Cup cycle, they were averaging, I think, more than 5 tries a game against Australia, just on average.
35 points.
I mean, they had some massive wins in that. Yeah. But prior to this World Cup cycle, since the Pro era, it had only ever been 3.
Yeah.
Even as New Zealand, I think between 2015 and 2019, arguably sort of lost their way a little bit, and certainly weren't the same force in last year's World Cup as they were 4 years ago when they were all conquering.
Sure.
Even in that era, the gap between themselves and the Wallabies has only widened.
Yeah.
So they bring sort of that, into this, and this is a young Wallabies team. The other thing is that this is the first of 4 games that these two teams will play.
4 Bledisloe tests this year.
Like you're talking about a young Wallabies team coming into a season. They have sort of the worst luck, arguably, of any side in Test rugby, in that they're going to have to play the All Blacks 4 times. I mean, trial by fire.
It is trial by fire, but they definitely need to find something. And like both of these countries, both obviously had their own domestic competitions. Both of them have gone completely through and reached their climax as well. We've had Super Rugby Aotearoa and Super Rugby AU.
Yes.
So they're not as ring rusty as we expect some of the South African teams to be. These guys have gone through a whole domestic season and are now ready for international rugby. So it's teed up for them to kind of pick from this big squad and try and pick a new team going forward. It's the start of a new World Cup cycle, so there is freshness there all over. And obviously there are those bad memories, and the All Blacks have obviously got the better of it over the last 4+ years for a long old time. But there's a lot of youth in Australia, and a lot of people, as you say, not quite as scarred by those bitter memories. So hopefully they'll be able to kind of hit the ground running and make a good
show
game.
No fear. Show no fear. That's the hope.
That's what you want from
youth. But we're going to take a quick look just sort of in the broader context of both of these teams before we get into the meat of the match itself. What are we going to be looking at? I mean, we have the All Blacks under Ian Foster first time, and we have the Wallabies under Dave Rennie first time. Loads of fresh faces. What are the teams going to look like? Who would we like to see in there? And how what are both coaches looking to get out of this game and this weekend as well? So we'll start by just taking a look at Ian Foster's All Blacks.
Sure. Now
the last we saw of the All Blacks, they were sort of eviscerated and destroyed by England in a World Cup semi-final, and it was the climax of a curious enough era for them. Like, they didn't win the Rugby Championship in 2019 either. I don't believe they're currently champions of anything except Bledisloe.
That's probably true.
Which isn't like them.
No,
which
it's unusual.
But so you have an All Black team coming into it like that, who really, and we sort of have a broader sort of analysis of this, that it sort of started changing. The All Black, the all-imperious offensive masterclass that was the All Blacks, started shifting during the 2017 Lions tour. And they started towards the tail end of Steve Hansen's coaching tenure becoming a bit more reactive instead of sort of proactive. They weren't making the games their own shape. They were sort of responding to what their opponents were doing. They were trying to sort of brush up on their ability to win games in multiple ways. Like, can we grind out a result here against this other top team because there might not be as much open space, as opposed to the sort of gleeful just batting away of everybody in their way.
In the run-up to 2015, they were definitely all skill-based
and they never changed their game for anybody.
They tried to make it all about tries, all about speed.
Exactly.
And you'd have to try and hang with that. Whereas, there's definitely they became a bit more.
This time last year, you had Bowden Barrett trying drop kicks, and everyone was trying drop kicks, and it was all just getting a bit more tight. Than that bad loss to Ireland in 2018 as well. And so they came into that World Cup. They rectified some things, but ultimately they weren't quite the powerhouse that they had been. And I think that's really what they're going to have to try to rediscover. So I think they need to be sort of true to themselves, always looking for space, always attacking tries. It's what they're best at. And boy, oh boy, if you look at the playing pool that they have to deal with, there's just oodles of potential there. They had a couple of questions to answer in terms of the centre partnership and the back row. I think in particular were two areas that you had looked at and said, like,
I think in the context of that World Cup team, the team that went to the semi-final and ultimately got third in last year's World Cup, I think the back row and the centres were the two areas where you would really cite a major difference in terms of cohesion versus the 2015 or even the 2011 variety of All Blacks. They were a bit unsettled and unsure of themselves in those areas. And they have new options there. Like for one, I'm excited to see Rico at 13 in that centre jersey. He has so much speed. He'll offer them something a little different from that 13 channel, which will probably suit the way we want to see the All Blacks play with that verve and speed.
Yes.
So that's obviously
he was super on D as well from that channel.
He was. Well, like in Super Rugby Aotearoa, we saw a lot of these guys, and the standard was very, very high from week one in that competition. It was very competitive, and a few guys stepped up, including Rico for the Blues, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he was great again in the North v South game. Mm-hmm. So I do think he's a front runner for that jersey. But there's a few wee question marks. What I've done here is just sort of pick the All Blacks team that I'd love to see take the field, and we don't quite know who Ian Foster's going to go with. I think he's naming his team on Friday,
right?
So we'll know then. But in terms of what I'm hoping to see, some of these seem likely, and some of them, might be a bit surprising. I think this is sort of the first team that I would pick at the moment on form.
Mm-hmm.
At loosehead, you got Joe Moody,
the stalwart,
ever present. Solid without being spectacular is how I describe him.
Well, they don't tend to scrum for penalties though. They scrum for solidity and launching.
Yeah, and he's sort of a workhorse in that, and just keep the penalties down. And he's a very solid international loosehead.
True.
Cody Taylor at hooker, incumbent. Awesome player.
Yeah.
Don't think Dane Coles has done enough this year to.
I think he's nursing a little bit of a tweak. They said, I was reading that as well. Dane Coles, like he's still just available for selection, but I'd imagine they'll go with Cody Taylor because of that as well.
Yes, yeah. At tight head, I think it's time for Ofa Tuamafasi, who was playing for the Blues this year, scrumming like he was really, really good in the scrum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an area of slight concern just in this game even, but because the Wallabies have been sort of quietly working away in the background, getting pretty decent scrummagers.
Sure,
So they don't want to be caught napping by then. They've obviously got Springbok games to come. I think Tuamafasi's best tight head scrummager in New Zealand easily, and I think he's actually a very useful unit around the pitch as well. His hands have gotten better. He's great. He gets around the field, carries really well, works every minute he's on the pitch. He works. So I'm a big Tuamafasi fan.
Mm-hmm.
Second rows, Patrick Tuipulotu. Has to be in there for me.
He's been awesome,
with Sam Whitelock.
He was very close to busting out in the run up to the World Cup as well. He showed some great form, I thought.
Yeah, he I think this season he might have even taken it to another level. I mean, ever since he burst on a few years ago, it's sort of been he never really been able to get a foot in against Retallick and Whitelock.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you had Scott Barrett coming in, it just looked like it was going to leave him behind. But he's been so good this year.
Yes.
So I think
part of a very physical pack, a very physical fresh pack.
Yeah, and using that physicality and being a leader. He's been picked as captain a few times. I believe he was captain of one of the sides in the North-South game.
Yes, I think he was.
So he's just really, really physical, useful operator. And I just think this tight five now with him and Tuamafasi in particular just has a lot more heft and bulk to it and can bully teams as well.
For sure.
But they all have been playing super quick attacking rugby, and they're able to get around the field. So I'm excited about
balance.
that. Yeah. Then in with him, Sam Whitelock ever present, not going anywhere. I don't think. The back row is an interesting one.
There's a lot of options.
There's so many options. I think like it's Sam Cane is captain.
Yes,
he's been picked in at 7. To be fair to him, in a floundering Chiefs, he's been the best part of them. Whenever he's played, he's been excellent.
Yeah,
and I think that the breakdown is going to be a jungle in this game as well.
For sure.
So I think having Sam Cane out there is undeniably a decent call.
Useful asset.
Then you have Shannon Frizzell.
He's been playing very well all season, but he's not the only one.
Yeah, and so for me, like I was a big fan of Satutu during the Blues game. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he looked like he was the next big thing at number 8.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love Artie Sevilla as a number 8. I don't think he quite as physical.
I prefer him as a number 6.
I like him as a number 6. You have sort of the 2-7 dynamic going on, and then with a big hefty guy at number 8.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know which way they're going to go with that, but I went Artie at 6 and Satutu at 8, and then you have to mention Papali'i as well.
Yeah, Dalton Papali'i has had a phenomenal season as well. There's just their cup runneth over as far as talent in so many areas. We were citing the back row as a potential weakness going into the last year. A lot of them have stepped up. A lot of these young guys have stepped up, and when you think there are a few guys who have even stepped down and retired, it's amazing to see the conveyor belt. So I don't know. I think I was reading one All Black article that suggests maybe Frizzell will get the nod, and they'll be unleashing Satutu off the bench potentially. I don't know. They both have their benefits and drawbacks. I think Satutu has really put his hand up as the heir apparent to Kieran Reid, who is obviously a big hole. There's a big Kieran shaped hole, and if you go with Ioane at 8 instead, it's a very different. Like he can't really do the same kind of game that Kieran Reid used to bring them, which is namely
if you go
getting
with 8. Sorry, if you go with
Ardie. Ardie at 8. He's a bit more of a ball runner. He'll be better in the tight. But I think what they really want their number 8 doing is being a distributor out wide, which Sotutu is excellent at. Kieran Reid gave them in their pump. Kieran Reid gave them a lot of that.
Was Sotutu? I remember there was one game for the Blues where Sotutu, I think, set up a try with a skip pass off the left hand.
Yes,
that was just.
But I think it was the North-South game where he rode 3 tackles in the wide channels, got the hand free, and offloaded on the inside to the scrummy, and that's an All Black try all over. Is exactly that. Dane Coles does it in the wide channel for them as well. He's just a really good operator, and he seems to fit the mould as an All Black. So whether it's off the bench or starting, I expect to see.
He was my number one person I was excited about from Super Rugby, and that's saying a lot because the backs are to come. I think at halfback it's still Aaron Smith. I think he's comfortably the best 9 in the world. Even playing for like Manawatu in the Mitre 10, he's showing that like he's such a difference maker. He's spooky good at passing.
His
and
speed and accuracy is right. And his box kicking's got better over the last few years as well. They don't go to it as often as other teams, but he can execute very well. What's interesting I find is between him and TJ there's a 10 kg difference, 10 kilo difference between the two, and you can kind of see it in their style of play, and it's kind of a like for like. If you want your scrummy to be combative, make tackles, get into the odd breakdown and spoil it, TJ's your man. But if you want the crisp kind of accuracy and the tempo, the trademark tempo, it's going to be Aaron Smith.
I think first game of the season, Aaron Smith is to be thrown in there. Don't sleep on the third scrummy in the squad, Brad Weber, either.
He's been brilliant.
He's a super player. He's not going to weaken them if they chuck him in, and you know they've got many games this season. They'll be trying many combinations with Aaron and TJ. They know exactly what they're getting. They've been bringing it for years. So it wouldn't be the most crazy thing in the world to see Brad Weber come in, would be at this game or one of the games.
They'll give him minutes. He's earned it as well. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of him, I think there's lots of talk about Moanga versus Barrett. For me, now this is where God knows what they'll do. They have so many options. The back line. I can see so many possibilities. I can see Jordy Barrett. A lot of talk about Jordy Barrett has to be in. I've actually left him out of this team. That goes to show sort of what kind of depth they have. But I just think actually in terms of getting All Blacks back to being All Blacks, they're sort of more useful players. So I think Moanga, after that performance for the Crusaders, you talk about that awesome hustle play against the Blues in that game that turned it around and arguably won Super Rugby Aotearoa for themselves right there. Moanga with that comeback, the little quick restart, gather, go. He's got
clutch in spades.
He's got clutch in spades. He's a world class 10 and he can't be dropped right now. Beauden Barrett then I think is also like one of the best players in the world. He doesn't go anywhere, so I think they play both. I think it's Moanga and Beauden, which is what they were doing last year, which is great. It was not the problem.
It wasn't the problem. It was cited as the problem, but it wasn't really the problem. Centres more so. Centres, there's a question mark over. There's things you could pick. Obviously, Braden Enor was a casualty of the North-South game. Fantastic game that it was. Enor went down early, so he's no longer playing. Lau Mape's been called up late to fill his kind of role as a centre. I don't know if he's quite in the running for that jersey.
He's still nursing an arm injury as well, so I
don't think it'll happen this week. He's obviously an option, but I think Jack Goodhue is who you went for at 12.
That's right.
And there's a lot of potential. He switched there obviously to accommodate Enor in the Crusaders this year. They were imperious again. He's grown he was brilliant last year. He's grown even more as a player. He's shown good maturity.
Yeah, I think he's overtaken who I've left out as Anton Leonard-Brown, who's, to be honest, suffered a little bit under Gatland's Chiefs. He was kind of a man frustrated. Gatland was trying to turn him into Jamie Roberts, and it didn't do him any favours.
Didn't do the Chiefs any favours either.
No, indeed.
He was definitely had a clunkier season. So on form, I think you do have to go Goodhue.
Yeah, and then 13 we obviously touched on already.
Rico Ioane. Bring that speed back to that jersey. And he's been distributing well as passing games come on, which isn't something you normally say about a winger come centre. Normally when guys switch in from the wing, they're a little soft on D. They're a little slack on their passing. Whereas Rico has distributed very well, and his D is brilliant because it's speed that he allows him to shut plays down. He's so quick off the mark.
Yeah, he's been super in Super Rugby Aotearoa, and I just think super impressed with Rico as well, because his career was tracking like we've seen so many times in terms of he had this explosion onto the scene in an All Black jersey on the wing, where he scored all the most test tries in the year. I'm not sure if he won or was nominated for World Player of the Year, but he was one of the very, very best for 1 year. And then his form dipped, and other guys came in, and Sever Reece and George Bridge came in, and he lost his jersey, and he just wasn't quite the same, and he was kind of stuck in the mud. And we've seen that so many times. We've seen it with the likes of even Milner Scudder, although injury has really plagued that career. But even like Julian Savea, you go back further, like there's so many wingers who burst on flash of the pan, and then the next thing that happens when they lose their jerseys, they go off to Europe, they make their career there. Their time in the All Black jersey is done. Rico hasn't done that. He's completely changed his game. He's playing with more energy and more physicality than he ever had. Switched position to a much more difficult position in outside centre, and has come out looking almost better than he ever has.
It's true.
So
I'm very excited for that
prospect.
prospect.
Couldn't be more excited. I think like if this works today on Sunday, it could be just an absolute. You got some of the most informed players in the world who could pack this team out. So I would be very, very excited to see Rico in the 13 shirt. And I'm very disappointed if that's what we don't see, but I think it will.
For sure. And then in your back three, again, myriad of options you could go with. Like whichever one you pick, you'll have other people critical because you left out some guy. But I'll just rattle off. You've gone for Caleb Clark 11, Will Jordan debutant from the Crusaders at 14, and then Bowden Barrett at 15. Obviously, I said before.
Well, for
that's
me,
leaving out Sever Reece. It's leaving out George Bridge. It's leaving D-Mac. I see you have D-Mac and George Bridge on the bench, but there's like a lot of really tasty wingers who aren't in this squad who could be.
Yeah, well, the Sever Reece is missing, and so is Geordie Barrett.
Yeah,
those are sort of the main other two from the squad. It's sort of muchness, and it's sort of like what Ian Foster's seeing is as big a factor as anything. Ian Foster was saying in the build up to this that he was talking about the fact that COVID restrictions were preventing him from actually meeting these players until he called up a squad. So he's sort of been watching, tape from the wings. Exactly, without like really getting up close and getting to know these guys like Satutu and like Will Jordan and like Caleb Clark, who are going to be coming into the team. So that's an interesting dynamic. But Will Jordan's form is crazy.
Pretty undeniable. He keeps scoring tries. Full back wing, doesn't matter. He'll just come in and score a try off the bench. He does it anyway.
And Bowden Barrett, likewise. Bowden Barrett is key to this All Black team. He's key.
Caleb Clark is a good shout. He's been fantastic this year.
Yeah, well, that's the option, isn't it?
The option is you could drop Caleb Clark for Sever Reece
or George Bridge
or Geordie Barrett.
Yeah.
And like you don't diminish the team that much for doing it. The wingers aren't necessarily game changers in that way. They're just going to finish.
I just think mixing it up is crucial, and I think wing is the perfect spot to do it. And I think Caleb Clark has given no reason to suggest that he's not going to go in there and just be super physical and overwhelm the Wallabies and really torture them and score tries.
Finish anything he's given, which the All Blacks will try and create that platform to have those wingers roll over the try line.
Like Satutu.
On debut, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Like Satutu, he's a young guy, but he's super physical and he has loads of great attributes, so you just wouldn't worry about the step up, especially in a game, no offence intended, with the Wallabies, a young Wallabies team. You don't expect him to be, tested so much that he's going to be completely out of his depth.
No, probably not. The replacements are kind of secondary there on your team, I guess. We still don't know. This is just the team that we would pick, I guess. Like you can do any other combinations, and they will. Like as we saw with the North-South game a few weeks back, they have at least two fully international caliber teams that are capable of being picked and playing. So there are all kinds of options. They're spoiled for choice. Whereas the Wallabies, who have named their squad also, and it's quite a broad squad. They're a bit thinner on resources. You were obviously citing at the top of the show that the average points per game and tries per game has increased for the All Blacks over the last 10 years plus. It's been
even the last World Cup cycle gone from 3 tries to 5
on average
per game conceded against the All Blacks.
That's a lot. So obviously Australia are starting from the ground up and trying to rebuild. But it's an interesting squad that they've named.
They put 16 debutants into a squad of I think 40 players originally, and that was a couple of months ago. But that's extremely exciting in and of itself. Dave Rennie, the new coach, he's another big question mark. I mean, he was brilliant back with the Chiefs.
Absolutely.
Way back when, he had a super team. They played excellent rugby. They were nice and aggressive, but also played a gorgeous style and really played to the strengths of the players that he had.
Implemented that with Glasgow a bit as well, but they were a bit soft.
They had their moments, Dave Rennie's Glasgow. I never got the impression from Rennie that he was overly committed to the job. Every time I heard him speak about it, like it was very much a stopgap, and it was a 3-year stopgap. He was there long enough, but he never really built anything. I don't think long term with that team. He got them playing some decent rugby. They were already playing some decent rugby.
And under Gregor.
He certainly didn't disimprove them significantly, but he didn't overly improve them either. So he goes into this with that sort of being a sort of not a black mark, but not exactly a stellar.
But one thing I would say
record.
is stylistically, his tempo and his try-seeking ways will suit the Australian mindset and the way they like to play the game as well. So I think it's a good fit potentially. Obviously, like it's untested, same as the other tickets, so we don't know. We're looking for new talent, looking for boys to step up. In terms of because to be honest, even with Cheika was getting all kinds of flack. But I thought he overperformed, certainly in the previous World Cup, the 2011 World Cup, where he somehow got to the final. Like all of the factors that we were citing as far as Australian rugby, like the players aren't as good, there aren't as many coming through, the money they're losing, like all of that was true going into that, and he somehow managed to get them into the final. Then obviously this year just gone a quarter-final exit to England, who ended up being World Cup finalists. It's pretty impressive considering when you watch some of their Super Rugby teams and some of the guys who are in there, where like you're looking at guys who just really haven't been international caliber, who've been in there for too long. That's been the case. So it's exciting. We definitely do need to see young guys step up when you see a few debutants really perform for this Wallaby side to click at all.
And to be frank as well, like I've seen bits of Super Rugby AU, but I haven't seen the whole thing. I certainly wouldn't be as familiar as someone over in Australia with some of these young guys. So there's a lot of unknowns for me going into this. Like, can they make the step up? The bits of it that I have seen, the pace of it was noticeably slower. And the ball and play time was noticeably less than what was going on in Super Rugby Aotearoa, which would concern you.
It would.
Because the All Blacks have a brilliant team that's coming in steaming.
Yes.
I think the biggest questions is going to be, how do these young guys, are they going to get blown away physically, or are they going to make the step up? It's a huge day out for them, obviously. Can they play with the right, first of all, physicality and intensity to sort of not get blown away by what the All Blacks are going to bring, to chop their tackles, to make good plays.
The first quarter, very important. Even if the result may be secondary, by the way, they're away from home and it's a new team, they will pardon a loss, but if they get absolutely obliterated again, that's obviously alarm bells. You don't want that.
What I have here in terms of the team they're going to go with, there's a few different dynamics. The team that I took from a writer at Rugby Pass, because I'm looking at the team. Finn Morton reckons this will be the team. I have the squad here as well, and there's a few different dynamics. Obviously 10 is one of the more the bigger ones, and obviously 9 even as well. So what's supposedly going to be the Wallabies team, God knows, again it's up in the air. This guy doesn't even claim to know, but it's what he's gone for is Scott CO, who we know very well at Loosehead, solid scrummager. Falau Faianga, who's never really delivered in the Wallaby jersey, but we live in hope.
Form dictates, get him in, hopefully, I guess.
Form dictates. Alan Alatoa, who's the incumbent there, who I would most certainly not select. I love Alan Alatoa's good, and it's great to have good scrummaging props back in Australia, and I think CO and Alatoa bring that. But I do think it's the time for Taniela Tupou. I'm actually very, very excited about Taniela Tupou. So they have him on the bench here. I'd love to see him start. In the locks, and this is where the Wallabies, you'd worry for them. They're pretty light at the locks. In their squad they've got Ned Hannigan, Trevor Hosea, Matt Phillip, Salakai Loto, and Rob Simmons.
That's weak.
It's very weak.
It's very weak.
First of all, Ned Hannigan is a converted 6. He's probably not physical enough to play lock at test level.
Not physical enough to play 6 at test level either. He's been he was one glaring problem I saw in that's actually Salakai Loto as well was another problem for him at the World Cup last year. He was loose and soft when it comes to the top tier.
Matt Phillip is a good prospect. He's nice and physical. I think he's going in. Personally, I'd put Rob Simmons in there with him.
So would I. I was just thinking that he's the only really physical guy that I think could match what is going to be a very physical pack facing.
And Trevor Hosea is the other young guy who's another question mark in my mind. But they have him on the bench here, but I wouldn't mind seeing them stick Rob Simmons in. I think if it's Salakai Loto, he's got some work to do because he wasn't that impressive last year. So that's a bit of a depressing almost one for them. The back row is where it gets a bit more exciting. Michael Hooper named as captain. He's ever present. Excellent, always blamed, but never the problem.
Yes, that's perpetually his fate with this Wallaby side.
So I'm happy to see him still in there. I think he's a great player. He's going to be partnered by. They have here down. Liam Wright and Pete Samu at number 8. Samu is incumbent. I think he can make the step up at number 8. I certainly
Samu is a very good
writing
player.
his obituary. I think he's an excellent player. And Liam Wright, obviously, I think is the best of the other options. They do have a couple of sevens as well. Fraser McWright is another promising 7.
Right.
So I wouldn't be the most surprised in the world to see them go 7-7.
Yeah.
Especially given how Dave Rennie has coached in the past with a lot of turnover stuff.
Yes.
In terms of the back line, there's just oodles of question marks. The halves is the first.
Yeah, we don't know what they're going to do with their halves. Obviously, they have Tate McDermott and James O'Connor here as starting 9 and 10. That's obviously an option. They do have other options. Jake Gordon's a decent scrummy.
I think
I'm
for
not a
me
huge Powell or White fan, although Nick White can be solid.
For me, Nick White is. I would start Nick White. I think Tate McDermott's exciting red scrum half. If they throw him in, great. But I think with a new 10, whatever they're doing. Maybe James O'Connor's the widest call. They have 4 candidates for the 10 jersey, and it's been sort of all the headlines about what they're going to do as a 10. But I think to partner them, especially in this game where solidity is going to be important and non-looseness is going to be important. As much as I've criticised Nick White, I've criticised Nick White in the past,
and he was very, very good. He moved up north and was very influential at club level as well. He's a very solid player.
Yeah, so I think Nick White at 9, and then at 10 you've got. The two sort of old candidates in Tamua and James O'Connor, both of whom have played most of their rugby not at 10, frankly, but both of them can play 10, and James O'Connor has played 10 this season. And then you have the two sort of young kids,
Lolosio and
Harrison. The Waratahs lad Harrison, and Lolosio. Sorry, yes, he's the young guy. They're both 20 years old, those young kids, and the lad Lolosio put on a clinic in the Super Rugby final and came back from injury, put on a clinic and won the Brumbies the Super Rugby final. He was named in the squad before he came back from injury.
So there you go.
Was
so
how
very
high
excited
they rated
about him for sure. I'd be very excited about him. Less so about Harrison. I watched a bit of the Waratahs this season, and he looks a little like Bernard Foley.
Yeah, he's 20 years old as well.
Yeah, I'm not damning him.
He's sort of the 4th out half in the squad, I would say.
He's there in a training capacity to get a bit of exposure, which is no harm as well for a new 10, but I doubt they'll go with him. O'Connor is what's listed here. They may go for that.
I think they probably will go for that.
James O'Connor's a wonderful footballer. Hopefully he can guide them. They'll need to be accurate as what they
James
need.
O'Connor's attitude has been very impressive in recent years, and they do need an experienced head to lead them there. And the other option of Matt Tamua is not a guy that I've loved. I don't think that he's going to be a feature in this World Cup cycle. If he is going to be in the team, possibly at 12, it's going to be more of a stopgap, I'd say.
Sure. They do like their 10-12 distributing axis, and actually here they do have him listed as their 12 option, Tamua, with either Pataya or Reece Hodge at outside
Jordan
centre.
Pataya is a doubt because he has a hip flexor injury.
Yes, which is a shame because he's very exciting. He was very good. He was one who did break into the World Cup squad, looked very good whenever he played there. Didn't quite get the run out because James O'Connor was in the 13 jersey. He didn't quite get the run out in the quarterfinal that we could have seen. But sure, hey ho, he's here now and he's very young and exciting. But Reece Hodge is rock solid as well as a potential 13. And then the back 3 is, we obviously have Marika Corabetti, who you're not dropping.
No, he's still in there.
But the excitement you had over Reds winger, was it Filippo
Daugunu, the Fijian lad, probably butchered that pronunciation, excuse me.
Daugunu.
He's had some highlight reel moments in Super Rugby, and is just a very exciting young winger who I think they're going to give the 11 shirt to.
Yeah, and then fullback they have Tom Banks here.
Yeah, Tom Banks
could pick a few others, but
Tom Banks will start. Solid again, decent kicking game. Even Reece Hodge in there, you wouldn't worry about. The other one I'd mention is Simone, the 12. I think he could come in and I think long term you're looking at him in the 12 shirt possibly over Tamua.
Yeah.
Regardless of what way they go this weekend.
And they have a few other outside backs who've been in and out. You have Jack Maddox and Haled Petty as well, who've been in and around the squad as well, a bit more experience, but I don't know, maybe you want to cut the kids loose a bit as well.
Jack Maddox is probably not quite on the level that he has been, but I wouldn't mind seeing him.
Wouldn't rule him out either. There's definitely room for these guys to play themselves into the team because obviously it's fresh. But those are the squads anyway, and the potential teams. I guess will we move on to the actual game itself? And we had a look at what both teams broadly want to achieve from it looking in. But when you look into the actual fixture, how do they want to play? So the All Blacks, I suppose, will start with the home team. What do they want to do when they have the ball? How do they want to attack? We kind of addressed it a bit at the start. It's to be honest, they're usually about attacking space, and that's going to be here again. Yeah. They love getting tempo on the ball, getting runners going forward, a bit of deception in their shape, but ultimately getting over the game.
They want to shock the Wallabies. They're gonna have some young guys in there, some guys making transitions like perhaps Rico into 13 shirt, and they're going to want to be. They've been playing, I think, to a higher standard in Super Rugby Aotearoa.
I think that's unquestionably true.
So I think the opportunity is there to really drive a pace and just shock Australia in terms of just they're going to be playing at a different level and a different speed and with a different physicality to what they've been playing with all season, and they have the potential there to shock them. So I think early in the game especially, the All Blacks with the ball are going to be looking to move it. They're also going to be getting to look like, you've got Tui Pilatu in there, I've got Tuangafasi and Satutu, but even in their absence guys like Frizzell, Artie Savea, getting them around the corner and getting them over the gain line is going to be huge. If they can do that early doors, the game is going to be so easy for them. Rather than even having to make the space and create with their awesome backline, if they can win that initial collision battle with shock, like they have so many classy players, if they can really get on top of the Wallabies in that area and then move it wide into the hands of Moangas and Ricos and
Barrett's, the Moanga Barrett axis works well, but it's the first point of contact is Aaron Smith. As we said, we're picking Aaron Smith, and you have your pods of forwards outside, and they pioneered the tip on pass. All their tight heads can do it. The little hold the ball tip either inside, outside, out the back to Moanga. It's a simple shape. You know it's coming, but it's so hard to defend, especially when it's done accurately and at speed. And that's what they're going to try.
There's just quick, athletic, dangerous options on each of them. Yeah, exactly. So just driving that pace and getting over the gain line and hitting holes and then supporting each other well. I think it's just going to be a game of speed. For the All Blacks with the ball. I think if they do that effectively, they could pull the Aussie D left and right. It's potentially a fractured young team, and there's going to be lots of scope, because all the All Blacks need is a little bit of room and the natural talent of Messrs Moanga, Goodhue, Rico, feckin' whoever they go with on the wing,
for sure,
Bodie as well. It's just going to be too much. If they can fracture the line at all, it's going to be too much for Australia to deal with.
Well, they're going to want to have those support lines that they're so renowned for in place as well, so that when they do break the line, they can get the hands free, get the offloads. They have a lot of players who are skilled at that. They will obviously they'll want to punish loose kicks and cheap turnovers with tries. That's part of the All Blacks MO, and you'd hope to see them clinical and sharp on that. But more importantly, I think, given that it's a new team, they'll want to see that multi-phase work. They'll want to see them be able to string the 6, 7, 8 phases and then get outside them. That'll almost be more encouraging if they can break them down that way than just like if the Wallabies panic and kick it to them and they score a cheap try off it. Great, they're still the All Blacks, they'll do that all day. We don't quite learn anything about your systems when that happens.
The beautiful thing is that at the top level they don't even need to coach that, because it's just instilled in them, indoctrinated in them from a young age, from grassroots. Every team, like, they're all on the same wavelength, and then you have the most talented guys in the most talented country all together on the pitch. They're all going to instinctually know how to execute a 4-on-3 in half a field of space if need be. That's just not even coachable. So that's a problem for Australia, to not give them those chances. But if they get them, they'll take them. But as you say, what had stalled was the multi-phase, and what had happened was they were just playing a little bit slower and they were a little bit arrhythmic. And
so it's pick Aaron, try and get that tempo. And like the way they want to, even though they'll probably be a bigger pack, it doesn't behoove them to try and just, like a Northern Hemisphere side, just bludgeon their way over. They need to do it with speed and with width. Like, even if you're playing off 9, play 3 men out off 9, skip 3 lads to get to the edge of the defence and fold them that way. They will be looking to do that and bring a little bit more pace and attack onto the ball with their multi-phase.
And when you consider the power they have in that pack as well, if they're executing at pace, which we know
and
those
getting
guys
some
can
offloads
do,
in the tight, it could potentially be
danger
damaging.
written all over it from an Aussie point of view.
For sure. And then when they don't have the ball, the All Blacks defensive system kicks in as well. So they're going to have to try and contain this Wallaby side, which is in itself exciting. And even even in their doldrum years, Australia have a really good collective mindset. Like you were saying, when the ball breaks, the All Blacks are brilliant at it, but the Wallabies are too. Sniffing a try out.
Yeah, if you want to give them a try, they'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. If you present them with something, they will score it. However, they can be a bit loose too. So so the All Blacks will be trying to come up off the line very aggressively first thing, bring line speed, put pressure on whoever they go with at 10, try and pressure this new system into making mistakes. And one of the tendencies we've seen in Super Rugby AU, and one of my least favourite habits of all seemingly across Australia, is that they'll make a line break and then the guy, before he reaches contact, will drop it on the toe and kick it away and waste it. And it's like that. That doesn't it goes unpunished in Super Rugby AU, but you can't go to the Cake Tin in New Zealand and expect to get away with kicking loosely like that. If you break the line, hold the pill, take the contact, set up a ruck, go again. Do not drop it on the toe and turf it. So the All Blacks will be trying to kind of present these odd pictures to them, because one of the things, if you're picking Barrett at fullback, he is, to my mind, the best at covering every blade of grass in that backfield.
No question.
And if you couple that with the Wallabies' instinct to try and kick it, you can paint some false pictures. You can have Bowden disguised over here. Maybe a young 10 or an inexperienced 10 will think that kicks on. It's not, because Bowden's going to be the first one to get there, and then you spring your counter-attack. So the All Blacks will try and kind of obviously smother them, but maybe deceive them a little bit with that too.
Yeah, there's a couple of huge jobs that they can do. Obviously, they're trying to generate turnover ball, and those false pictures are crucial as well. I think the breakdown battle is going to be massive. I think Australia, obviously Pete Samu, Michael Hooper, very solid, very good players. Michael Hooper has been one of the best in his time at the breakdown. Yeah. But with guys like Artie and Sam Kane, who specialises in that area,
experts,
like, I think they should be attacking the Wallabies in that area. I don't think they should be too worried about like sort of fanning out, especially if they're winning contacts, which I think they should be able to do. Making their tackles, not giving up cheap meters. Then you can get guys like Sam Kane in attacking the pill. Artie Savia, one of the best in the world at stripping guys of the ball. He's so good at it on D. If he gets his hands on you, he can just rip that ball away like sort of an NFL play. Artie Savia has that skill down. So I think attacking the pill and contact and really just stifling and frustrating and terrifying
their rhythm and disrupting their ball, disrupt their rhythm, and they'll ultimately kick it to you, and then you'll have kick return tries. That's got to be the blueprint for All Black multi-phase defence.
And then obviously the reading of Rico from 13, which has been so good in Super Rugby, is going to be the key to shutting them down on the outside, and that's going to be a key battle. If he gets that wrong and lets them on the outside,
they
will be punished.
Them and get out wide. They do have danger men out wide as well, and I think in the case of both wingers, like exciting wingers on both teams, they will win with the ball and probably lose without it. Like I back them more as attackers than defenders. So then we move on anyway to the set piece, which is an interesting dynamic. We were talking a little bit about it with the selection of certain players. We have good scrummagers in Australia now. I'd expect what'll ultimately amount from it is probably parity. I don't expect either side to necessarily gain too much of an edge as far as milking penalties from scrum time. I don't know. Well, maybe I'm wrong on that.
I think if you're Dave Rennie, and I know Dave Rennie's instincts are to play sort of chaos rugby, and I like that in a lot of ways. But I also think the Wallabies need to be smart about where the All Black weaknesses are and where some of their strengths may have shifted to. Scotty Seo, Alan Alatoa, if Taniela Tupou, but if James Slipper comes on at loosehead, obviously that changes
everything.
Because I don't think he's the best scrummager in the world. But I think Taniela Tupou in particular, Alatoa is a brutal scrummager, and Tupou has all of this physicality and bulk, as well as a nice aggressive scrumming style, as well as a super ability in the loose. So I think I'm very excited about him, and I'd love to see him get on and have a niggle at Joe Moody. I mean, the All Blacks are going to be tough to get on top of. It may not happen. The All Blacks are very hefty.
The engine room is where I'm doubting that Australia. However good those props are for Australia, I don't know about the drive. That's why I wouldn't mind seeing some strong guys in their second row too. Like if they're picking Salakai Loto there, it doesn't scrum powerfully.
It's definitely a dodgy one in terms of the engine room. So where they might try and have a niggle is really attacking Joe Moody. And while he's pretty decent for a loose head, but he doesn't tend to attack scrums. And can they shock him? Can Taniela Tupou in particular get on top of him, drive him into the ground? Well, obviously you can't drive him into the ground, but shake up his bind enough that he presents the bad picture to the ref. I would love to see the Wallabies have a go on that. And then on the other end, in the line-out drive, I think that the Wallabies, it's been a crucial mainstay of the Brumbies for years. Ever since the All Blacks have lost Big Brodie, They haven't been as solid at dealing with line-out mauls from a defensive point of view. They usually give penalties away. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So I think
historically it's not a strength for them. They were shocked by it by the Springboks in the 90s and all of that. They don't love defending mauls. So try and paint that picture. Try and bring that physicality and organisation. Because rugby's maul is a picturesque thing. When they get it right, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
I think you're dead right.
I think they should absolutely be. Like, I think one of the things that we emphasise constantly on this show is the mistaken, missing game management moments. And from a Wallabies point of view, if you get an early attempted 3 points from sort of a little out, even a free 3-pointer, you're away in New Zealand and you need to score tries because these boys are coming. And if they're not clicking at the start of the game, you know they're going to be clicking at 60 minutes, so you need to take advantage of this. And that 3 points is not enough of an advantage, especially when you feel you can have a niggle with a line-out maul from 5. They should be attacking every try they can. You're not going to win this game 9-6. The Wallabies need to be... I don't think they will be naive enough to think that, but it's a classic underdog move to take a couple of early 3-pointers and feel very pat themselves on the back and feel very happy about their opening 20 minutes with a 6-0 lead as the underdogs. And then click, especially against the All Blacks. It's gone. Gone.
Well, sure.
Half time, it's over.
Whatever about underdogs, we saw the Springboks fall foul of that in the one game they lost in the World Cup. They went 6-0 up in a dominant first half display, and then bang,
it's not try. Because they'll just... you need to play 80 minutes of perfect rugby to pull that off. Whereas if you're actually going for tries and getting them, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to outscore the All Blacks.
Yes, which is tough enough to do on itself.
So I think the set piece in that regard is going to be crucial for Australia.
Whereas for New Zealand, from their point of view, they will be looking for parity and then to launch off the top of lineouts, off the back of scrums. They have some very innovative moves. They have a history of being very incisive off those set pieces and starter plays. So I expect them to look to lock those set pieces down and then launch while the forwards are tied up, give their backs a chance to go one-on-one with their opposite men, obviously. And then the one little intrigue as well, restarts, the other set piece. I just had the note that both of these, the last competitive fixtures both of these teams played were against England, and on both occasions, in the quarter and the semi-final disappointments, they were schooled on restarts. Restarts were killing them. They were pinned back. They were exiting poorly, conceding attacking opportunities to England, and then ultimately conceding points. I wonder if they'll have learned from that. Will they have focused on it? Will they have cited it as a major weakness or a major flaw because of it? I don't know.
It's always a curiosity with the Wallabies as well, the restart, because especially under Cheika they did some goofy things. They had their whole team standing back on the 10, on their own 10, and then the out half just do a little flick up and then all start sprinting and they try and time it. They've kicked to try and recover. They usually try and... They're a great team for trying to gee themselves up in some way and win these little moments and do goofy things and pull them off and get pumped up over it. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them getting goofy off the restart and trying to recover it and trying to kick it just 10 or trying all kinds of cheeky plays. The more solid one that's conventionally done around World Rugby this year, the trend is certainly to kick it deep, let them set up an exit and then attack
from the ensuing
it's definitely the more... it's definitely the more
percentage play these days.
Yeah, exactly, because there's just less can go wrong.
Yeah.
So you would probably recommend it, but I wouldn't be surprised seeing the Wallabies trying some stuff off restarts possibly to their detriment.
Possibly, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But then we'll switch to the Wallabies when they have the ball. What do they want to do with it? How are they going to attack this New Zealand team?
Yeah. Well, this is the question from a Wallabies point of view. I mean, there's sort of a balance that has to be struck. There's a great piece in Rugby Pass by Ben Smith, one of their writers over there, which I enjoyed, and so I'll give him a shout out. It referenced Ireland, in fact, as well, in terms of how the difference between the teams that beat the All Blacks and the teams that don't, and why in all of this All Black stuttering, as we touched on in the start, they've never suffered in Bledisloe. They've never even been made to sweat really in Bledisloe games, certainly the ones of consequence in the Rugby Championship. They've just owned that fixture, and part of the reason is because the Wallabies have, when they've been using the ball, played the All Blacks into the game a little bit, and that comes from, it sort of goes perhaps back to what you were talking about earlier with the loose kicks on line breaks, but just lacking a bit of patience and trying to get around them instantly and trying to score quickly and trying to turn the tempo up to 11 and play the All Blacks in the basketball game. Which, you know, these guys are the Lakers.
You're backing your skill set against the All Blacks, who are the more skillful team. It's a silly thing to do.
There's nothing wrong to backing your skill set necessarily, but there has to be something done about being smart. And when you look at the teams that have beaten the All Blacks in the last sort of few years, one of the things that they've done is starved the All Blacks of what has been their biggest weapon, which is points in transition. So that comes from loose kicking, bad knock-ons,
getting ripped, getting stripped,
all those things we were talking
getting isolated and turned over.
Sam Caned, Artie Savid, or kicking it to their back three, or knocking it on, etc.
Well, that's the bad instinct. Bad instinct in Wallaby wingers.
Wallabies
just dropping it on the toe.
The exact same. I think Ben Smith described it as sort of a Groundhog Day fixture, and it really has been. The games have taken the exact same shape, and the Wallabies, even when they're in it, on their very best days, everything comes off perfectly and they compete. But otherwise, you know, you even notice like Reece Hodge will get into a bit of space, or Hale Petty, and he'll try and take the outside even though it's not quite there, just because he's being that aggressive Wallaby mentality. And they don't quite think about recovering the ball. All of a sudden he's away from his support, he's trapped, ball's turned over, All Blacks are that good. Oh no, all of our team are over here. They've moved it to the other side, they scored a try. Now we're restarting again. And that's how quickly it can snowball on you against the All Blacks. Whereas teams like Ireland, when Ireland beat them, held the ball for ages and ages and ages and back themselves on phase play, and perhaps it's Ireland are another extreme where it's to their detriment that they never play rugby and they end up not scoring.
Even winning one try to none is there.
That's obviously a killer as well. But if you can dictate the pace of the game and just frustrate the All Blacks defence, what will be a fractured All Blacks defence, by not giving away the ball cheaply, by holding the ball. Even like if the pass is there, I don't hate throwing an offload. You know, they've got an exciting young Fijian winger in there. They've got an exciting young tens to come in. There's nothing wrong with the kids trying to show Dave Rennie something, but they have to be smart and not throw the 50-50s, not throw the Hail Marys, but instead just back themselves on their multi-phase to slowly drain away and pick away and catch the little struggling combinations, perhaps of Goodhue and Ioane or whoever they go with in the centre. Maybe there's miscommunications to be found, and keep attacking them. And the All Blacks get frustrated. They don't like defending.
No, they don't. I'd love to see that. I think it's unlikely, just given what we saw in rugby, Super Rugby AU, and just what has prevailed in Australia and Wallaby rugby is like they don't go through that many phases. They don't really like teams that do go through that many phases. They tend to kind of go moaning about it being ugly, and it's like as true as that is, I think what you're harking on is they just need to have that little more nous and back themselves in that way, back themselves to kind of retain the ball rather than back themselves in that one play, in that one moment. There's a try on every play if I pull off this miracle pass. It's like, possibly that's true, and it's a lovely philosophy to have, and it means that you will score tries.
It just turns out the try is for the All Blacks.
Yeah, exactly. There's more like they're playing the percentages that way.
I don't hate the Aussies playing rugby. In fact, they have to stay true to their roots and play rugby.
They do.
But they also are putting together, and if you're Dave Rennie and you're sitting in the hot seat and you're putting together a team to play the All Blacks, there has to be an understanding that frustrating them, and there's times, you know, you learn lessons from teams like Exeter as well, and like there's times when it actually hurts a team more when you take 10 minutes to score a try than if you just scored it on that first phase. There's sometimes when you can absolutely drain a defence, and the longer that you can keep the All Blacks defending, and the longer that you can keep them pinned back, the better and more important it'll be. The problem for the Wallabies, for me, I think they should attack that way, and I think hopefully they can limit their errors. And if they do all that, the potential winning picture starts to form, despite what we were saying earlier about how good this All Blacks players are. You know, holding the ball, frustrating them, managing the offensive breakdown. All of that's great.
And we'll also need, in that context, their forwards, their loose forwards, but also some of their tight five to really step up in a level that we haven't seen from them. Whoever they pick there, we haven't seen at the level that they'll need to reach to win this game in that way, but they'll need to be dominating collision zones. They'll need to be shocking the All Blacks with their physicality.
Just being technical as well, like getting good body positions at the ruck, not entering from the wrong angles. And like we talk about the All Blacks being great, but one of the things that they do is give away penalties, and if the Wallabies can be the more disciplined side,
Yes.
that sets up the set piece, that sets up the potential try, that sets
gives
up
them all the
winning
territory,
picture.
and like it's easier to play, it's easier to hold the ball when you're in the opposition 22 than when you're firing it across the halfway line speculatively.
The problem does arise when that doesn't start happening, and always in a game there's moments when that doesn't happen, when the All Black pack is getting on top of you, when your attack is stalled, when your first phase set piece move didn't work but you've still got the ball.
Yeah.
And I think you're always in a difficult spot no matter where you're on the field if your plan is to give the All Blacks the ball from where you are.
Yeah.
But that does sometimes happen. So in terms of when they're in their own 22 and they're just exiting, this is sort of why I pick. Yeah, that's why I pick Nick White mainly, is getting out of there, getting his good kicks, aiming for touch, chasing well, stopping the quick throw, not offering them an opportunity on counter-attack.
Kick return, counter-attack, transition,
but also getting yourselves up the field and out of danger and resetting. When you're outside of the 22, it's a little dodgier. Like you have
speculative bomb is a play, but I don't love it. I'd sooner see the touch. If they pull them from side to side and doesn't go anywhere, surely there's space in the backfield for a corner pen finding one. If it finds grass, that's fine. Well, but if it's kicked straight down Bowden's throat.
No, exactly.
Doom.
The loose kicks are bad, and the bombs can go very wrong.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the Wallabies have as a strength is a huge variety of potential kickers. No matter who they pick.
Yeah.
You got Matt Tamua. He can definitely kick a ball. I wouldn't
Reece
love
Hodge.
giving him the Reece Hodge comes in,
boot.
great boot. Tom Banks, super boot, and then James O'Connor as well. All have a good eye for it.
Yeah.
So
Nick
absolutely,
White, solid,
moving the ball around and forcing the wingers up and kicking it in to find touch, because Bowden will kill you if you don't.
Exactly. Yeah,
but kicking it in behind to find touch, that's the way their kicking game has to go. They I can't emphasize enough, they have to limit the opportunities they give the All Blacks with ball in hand.
That's got to be key
on counter attack.
And then I suppose when they're defending, much the same thing. It's a very tough job. Big day for Hooper and whoever's partnering him in the back row. They need to disrupt the All Black tempo, be that through dominant collisions or a Hooper over the ball when they have an opportunity. But they can't be silly, because the refs are focused on the thing. They can't go flying into the top. They can't go flopping over their feet. I would sooner see them designate Hooper and maybe one other, if they're going dual sevens, have those two be the guys, and everyone else fan out and stay on your feet. There are teams that do that way. I know getting your hands in and harrying is more like
one of the things that I would say is that the Dave Rennie Chiefs team at their very best, that was where they kind of made the name for themselves on defence. They were brutal at turnovers, and then they were, like the All Blacks, great on transition. The Chiefs were a great team, and there's no reason why the Wallabies couldn't be that way as well. A fractured line is a fractured line, no matter who's doing it. So I think that it's a potential opportunity creator for them, and it's also going to be vital that they don't give the All Blacks their own way. So yes, get in there. Don't be silly. Like, you don't want Michael Hooper flopping into dead breakdowns, as you say. You have to pick your moments, but you do want them, especially when they have the opportunity, just putting an arm in, attacking that pill in contact, constantly just threatening the turnover, and then slowing up the All Blacks, because as we said when we were talking about the All Blacks, their priority is tempo and rhythm, and they're going to be getting guys from all angles on the ball, perhaps over the gain line. You're going to need to have someone in there. You're going to need to have, whether they get the ball or not, slowing it up, frustrating it,
for sure.
Just disrupting the All Blacks' tempo is vital.
You do need you need that, obviously, but you'll need a cohesive line to be on their feet too. What I will really hate to see is if obviously the All Blacks are pulling them to and fro, if they're getting over the gain line, getting around them, getting behind them, and then in response the first guy to a dead breakdown is throwing his hand, if it's Salakai Loto or someone who's, it's not his job, but he's in there anyway, and then suddenly there's not enough people on the short side. It's just a dysfunction that you'd rather not see. I'd rather see them cede those meters, but get back in line and get up quickly together, like try and shut them down that way. And then in the contact zone, obviously it needs to be dominant collisions. If they're going to stop this All Blacks, they need to hit them.
Just good tackles. I'd even go so far as saying, like, you got guys like, potentially Satutu, Artie Savia, Tuipulotu coming at you down your throat, these huge units. Like, you need to be a bit Welsh about this. You need to be getting down, super aggressive chop tackling, and stopping them at source. That's the kind of tackler you need. Good tackle technique is crucial here.
Yes, for sure.
Because you're not going to outmuscle them. You're not going to pick them up and drive them back.
Hips and down or lower if it's a bit more in space. But in the tight, I definitely think, because they will, the All Blacks will be looking for the offload. Attack the pill with your arm as you're entering the contact zone. Attack the pill. If it's in the tight. If you're the only man there, Like, don't miss the tackle for the sake of swinging at the ball, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think the attacking the pill thing is for the second guy, and that's when you're talking about in the tight. The first guy needs to prioritise stopping the unit coming at him.
Yeah.
And that's, especially in the tight, if the All Blacks are going to try and gain yards in the tight areas, just chopping these guys is going to be vital.
Yeah.
But, you know, the All Blacks, they can move it wide as well. Like that, we said first priority for them was obviously dominating those tight areas. If the Wallabies can stop them there, they will just put in a little bit of simulation and move it straight to Mo'unga's hands, and they'll try to get you out wide that way, and the job does not get easier out there.
Well, if it's Reece Hodge or whoever it is in the 13 jersey, it's a mammoth task to try and shut down this team. We've seen Laitanio Am do it successfully for the Springboks, but he is a kind of a one of a kind unit of a defender and a reader of the game. You do need that 13 to be on, because it's such a fulcrum of a channel. It is where they transition from the narrow to the wide.
You think about what happens when Rico Ioane gets outside the Wallaby 13 channel.
Yeah, it's just
he's got Bowden Barrett running around, and he's got it's exactly.
You can't afford to let that happen. So it needs to start in tighter to the ruck. They need to be driving them back, disrupting them. If 1 in every 3 contacts can be a dominant Wallaby hit, then they have a chance. Then it's a bit more time for the 13 to get up in the face of Rico, pressure the pass.
Frankly, if the Wallabies don't have success inside the 10 channel in that forward pack on D, it's going to be an impossible task to shut down their backs.
For sure.
So that is where they're going to need to front up. And as you say, if they do that, they will have a chance at disrupting what will be, a fresh new All Blacks team that could make mistakes.
Sure, and if they're excited to please and just a bit more prone to throw the looser speculative offload, then be ready to pounce and get your own turnover try on the New Zealand. That would be the picture, because as you say, it's been a Groundhog Day fixture over the last few years, and the Wallabies are desperate to change that, and it will be a great way to start off the tenure of Dave Rennie if he can come to New Zealand and claim that scalp. That being said, they are the underdogs, so I'm leaning towards the All Blacks.
What do you think? You think Groundhog Day?
I think Groundhog Day. I think the All Blacks are going to win 6 tries to 3, 2, maybe 2. About that.
I don't know. I don't know. The All Blacks have much better players. I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised to see the Wallabies cope. I fear for them. I think there is a winning picture out there. There's a win to be had in early season, but they're going to have to play so well, and they're going to have to limit their errors to such a degree, and they probably won't. They'll probably make errors, and that'll cost them. Whether we see anything from the All Blacks on multi-phases, that's another big question. But as far as the result is concerned, it just seems very unlikely that anything other than a dominant All Blacks win and Groundhog Day is the conclusion.
That's where I'm leaning. All right, but with hope that we see something anyway. A lot of new kids, new coaches. It's an exciting team, and there's exciting 2 teams. And international rugby is back.
Rugby's back.
The best thing about this game.
That accounts for our outrageously long but fun preview. I think about an hour long preview of that game. Well, international rugby returns, and so it deserves it.
Yeah. And with that, we will move on to South Africa, where their domestic season is getting underway. Exciting times, because they've obviously they're as affected as everyone else. They were kind of the longest with in terms of the break, in terms of returning to play. We did have the game last week. We had a few games to club games, but we also had the gold versus green.
We did
a game which was just a little lower intensity than some of the stuff we've seen. It's very much the beginnings of their season, and that's what was telling from it. It was great to see these guys back. They are world champions. But we saw it a bit when with all the teams returning. The first few weeks of play after such a break, there's a little sluggishness.
No question. I mean, it was 25 to 9, I should say, from Razzie's green team against Jacques Nienaber's gold team.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bigger pack won out, really.
The bigger pack won out. Razzie picked much better, as it turns out, up front.
Well, if it's going to be a bit loose, the pack is just going to decide who wins the game.
Exactly, especially in South Africa.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a, when you compare it to North v South, it was a bit of a slog, to be honest.
But it's a bit of a harsh comparison, because this is them at the beginning of the season, whereas the North v South game came after a full domestic club season where they're all primed.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There was some hope for some lads, especially on the green team, got a chance to show more. There was poor old Laitanio Am in that gold team was a hapless man by the end. He had a nice break that wasn't converted at the very end. He did, and he had a sensational play where he shut down what could have been a green try, making a tackle and getting in and getting a jackal after a break by them. But the green team were just much much better. And it was very scrappy. There was very little attacking rugby. There was an awful lot of kicking and an awful lot of scrums, and to be honest, the tries came from scrappy plays as well.
They did, yes.
So it was a scrappy old encounter, but a good hit out, as you say.
Yeah.
No more and no less than a good hit out for the lads. I would be, in terms of the style of rugby, I would have loved to have seen them try and play a bit more.
Yeah.
But obviously, for understandable reasons, especially when you have defenders as physical as they have over in South Africa, you do get punished if you're going to be trying something in attack and it's just not going to work.
If the ball hits the deck, it can be 7 points.
Yeah, you can be really badly punished. They play aggressive D,
yes.
So it was obviously tough to do that, especially in that sort of Bok showcase game.
Yeah.
But you look the week prior at the preseason games, and the Bulls had 49-28 win over the Sharks.
Yes,
and the Stormers
they were 35-0 up at one point in that
Yeah.
game. It was a crazy, not a good start for the former in-form team, the Sharks. Pre-lockdown, they were in form, and obviously it's all start again. Great to see the Bulls hitting the ground running in that regard.
Yeah, and the Lions also played the Stormers to complete their little superhero weekend, and the Stormers got the better of that.
Yeah.
In terms of what's actually going on in their tournament, we see they have their 7 teams. They have
Yes.
a 7-team competition, Super Rugby something, Super Rugby South
Unlocked.
Africa. Unlocked.
Yes,
is the new name.
It is Super Rugby South Africa, but it's unlocked.
The South Africans are full of locks.
Yes, it's true. Actually, unlocked is a bit of a silly term.
Yeah. So we've got the 4 Super Rugby teams: the Sharks, the Bulls, the Stormers, the Lions. Then we got the Cheetahs coming in from the Pro 14, and we got the Griquas and the Pumas, who we see in Currie Cup rugby from time to time as well.
Yes.
This weekend, the Sharks are playing the Lions, opening the show at 6 p.m. Irish and British time on Friday evening.
Yeah.
The Cheetahs will play the Pumas in Bloemfontein on Saturday at 3:30 British and Irish time.
Yeah.
Bulls and the Griquas will play on Saturday evening 6 p.m. That's in Loftus in Pretoria.
Yeah.
And the Stormers have a bye opening weekend. Just to take a sort of a brief look into the competition, we're just going to sort of run through what really to expect from each side, starting with sort of the incumbent favourites, despite that pre-season shellacking, the side that looked so good in Super Rugby. The Sharks, who are my boys.
Yes.
I love the Sharks.
Yeah, we're neutrals, but Daragh will be following the Sharks. He's in his Sharks colours, sure.
Not really.
They're a brilliant team, very physical. They just seem to have a lot of grit in terms of game. They recognise good game. They're the most likely club to go to New Zealand and get a scalp.
Well, they've been the most intense defensive team in New Zealand for a couple of years.
In South Africa.
In South Africa for a couple of years. They were the informed side pre-lockdown. They had developed sort of a nice physicality as well as a clinical edge, because they had that lethal back three with Fassi, Mapimpi and Nkosi, as well as just a brutally efficient defensive team, and that combined really well. That's sort of the South African model. Great defence, great physicality with lethality out in the wings and the wide channels,
and just a grit in general. Like, they're never out of games. They'll even if they cough up a score, they are retaliatory and tough. Which is lovely to see. They did get blitzed by the Bulls.
They got blitzed. It was their first game in however many months, obviously, but they did get blitzed, and there's just a slight fear that they're not going to be the same force now. They almost certainly won't.
Nkosi is injured, isn't he?
Nkosi's injured. Afalele Fassi, who was the fullback, really pushing for Springbok inclusion, perhaps. Obviously himself and Gallant, really pushing for that fullback jersey, I would have thought, but he's out injured. Andre Esterhazen, who had such a beautiful combination with Lacanio Am in the centre.
No longer in at centre.
He's left the club. And I think the last one, there was another loss as well. Mapimpi's gone to Japan as well. So
the back three is no more. That devastating back three isn't there.
No, it's not. that whole back three is gone. So it's entirely different. They've brought in some guys. Werner Koch, who you might remember, a giant blonde man who's playing the Springbok Sevens team.
He's a very combative yoke.
He's an extremely combative yoke, and it's curiosity as to where he'll play. I think they stuck him in on the wing, and that seems fine.
Like, he's pacey. He plays like a number 7 on a sevens team.
Pitch.
On a sevens pitch, but obviously he has wheels because he's a sevens player, so maybe on the wing.
And they brought in the lad from the Southern Kings, who are obviously no more the right winger, who played Yaw Pinche, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure.
He was one of the bright lights in what was an otherwise dismal team.
Southern Kings team, and he played very well in the Green v Gold match as well with his limited opportunity. He looked quick and aggressive, so he's come into the Sharks. And the other question mark really over in Sharksville is about Kerwin Bosch.
Because he came in that green v gold. He didn't look great either off the bench. He looked a little better than Willemse, who had a nightmare. But there's definitely, because Pollard's injured and obviously overseas as well, he won't feature in this competition at all. But he is the Springbok number 10, and it's a question mark beyond that. Yankees is the incumbent guy following. Kerwin is another guy in contention, and he is the Sharks man. And you'd love to see some of these 10s that they do have make the step up and start looking.
It's a curiosity for them. You can kind of see in that regard why they have been a little shy about entering the Rugby Championship this year, and now they've sort of been browbeaten into doing it. Where really they're focused on the Lions tour, but like in terms of form, somebody's going to have to step up, otherwise they're going to be it's going to be
fielding a weaker 10.
They're going to have a very tough time of it in the Rugby Championship, potentially if they don't if the guys don't hit the ground running, because Australia and New Zealand so far ahead of them in their season.
Just in terms of the season.
And Kerwin Bosch is one of those guys in the absence of an Andre Pollard. You have a big 10 shirt to fill. Elton has done it before and never quite delivered. He's a bit slight. Damien Willemse had an absolute nightmare in the green v gold game.
He really did.
And so the door is open. The door is definitely ajar for whomever. For Kerwin perhaps to step in. So I'd love to see it.
And he'll have to play well for the Sharks to have a chance as well. But yeah, that's kind of the Sharks as we go into this. Were brilliant last year. Obviously, still a fantastic club and team. Yeah. But they'll need to find something because the momentum isn't quite with them just yet. But then, speaking of momentum, the Blue Bulls.
Yeah.
Our friend Unbiased Rugby Don's team, they looked fantastic last week. They absolutely blitzed through the Sharks.
They did.
They have made a few marquee signings. They've got a bit more grit about them. Yeah. Because they've annoyed us for a few years, the Bulls, where on paper they're probably the best team in South Africa when you read their team a lot of the time. Sometimes that's definitely true, but then you watch some of the plays out of them. Even when Pollard was there a few years ago, some of the looseness would drive you mad.
They used to be your least favourite team.
They used to
wreck
my head. They'd wreck my head because they'd be so good. They'd pull it off. They'd beat the Sharks one week and then they'd go away to the Jaguars and put in a terrible show or something. It was they're up and down mercurial, but just with kind of a softness that I really don't love in my SAFA teams. That was them. But this entity now, they have obviously some big guys like Arno Both has come in, Dwayne Vermeulen, obviously there, what a unit.
Champion.
Don't they have Unikanye, or who do they have up front?
Trevor Unikanye, I think he might be injured, but he's obviously vital if he is in there.
Yeah, they have...
Arno Boat's a great acquisition. Gio Applin, who was sort of Cheslin Colby before Cheslin Colby, a tiny little scrum-capped fast man, has come in at fullback, who's going to be super helpful for them. Yeah. Mornay Stain has come in a 10 shirt.
The immortal Mornay Stain. Yeah. Wherever he is, he's found the fountain of youth. He still keeps playing lovely footy. Talking of 10s, if Mornay is out,
it could happen.
Stranger things have happened. You could go with all the young guys, but if they're not quite cutting the mustard, you still have a Mornay Stain to throw in there.
He could well feature in the Rugby Championship, Mornay Stain. And then obviously Cornel Hendricks coming in to play 12 from the wing. Super exciting. And I've always kind of liked Cornel Hendricks. He's had injury, but I always dug him. We'll see how he does on D, especially from 12.
That's kind of my big point for the Bulls. I think when they string it together, they can generate a nice momentum. They can bully teams. They're big enough to win collisions and score some nice tries. But what I want to see is that defensive grit that we were associating with the Sharks, where just don't let them in. If someone's knocking on the door 5 metres out, don't softly cough the try up and go to halfway. We see too much of that over the last few years. Be bullish. Be very abrasive on your own line, because it's the Springbok way. And I think, to be fair, with Razzie now switching from a coaching job to a director of rugby job, I think that's been the focus. He really does want the Super Rugby teams to rediscover that bite and that grit.
Yeah, go and the Bulls
are kind of as good a barometer for that as any team, because they have all the talent. They haven't quite strung it together. This is the season now, domestic season, a chance for them to hit the ground running and build something.
I see here actually Trevor Unikanye along with Upo Moje is COVIDed out. Well, I think Moje has the virus and Kanye is a close contact. Right. So he's missing this weekend. But he will come back. His form was stellar last year, so I'd be excited to see him in action as the season goes on.
For sure. Yeah.
But that is the Bulls, and they would be
good luck to them. I'd love to see them do really well, because then if they come into the Pro 16 with a proper team, I'd be very excited for it. I really do
the Bulls. Go on.
The Bulls.
Don.
Go on, Don.
Unbiased rugby.
Yes, unbiased rugby, but we'll cheer for the Bulls a bit as well.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to the Stormers, the Thormers, Khaleesi Stormers. Wonderful team that they are. Another gritty team.
They're they're an interesting entity, the Stormers, for me. They've had sort of good seasons and bad and inexplicable poor away form as well as everything else.
Yeah.
They tend to be sort of, they have good very good players and then not up to scratch players. They have excellent Springboks in their team.
Yeah.
Bongi Mbonambi for one, I think is brilliant. Kits off in the front row with him and Malherbe. It's a very good scrummaging unit. It's a scrummaging unit that put the fear of God into an English starting World Cup kind of scrummaging unit. So it's an absolute brutal front row. Mm-hmm. They got Sia Khaleesi in there. I don't think there's yet sign of Peter Seftotoy. Last I heard of him, he had that hematoma that in his leg that turned into something. It was like, I can't remember what it was, but they said he could have had his leg amputated.
Jeez. There's
some mad thing where they said he had like he could have lost his foot, and it was one of 43 ever diagnosed cases of whatever it was.
Wow. So,
but apparently he was on the mend anyway. But I don't think we're going to be seeing him just yet. But obviously Peter Steff,
return,
awesome player. So their pack, I think, are going to be good. They're going to be competing right up there with the best teams in it.
Yeah.
I think the question mark is sort of, in a back line that no longer has the likes of Dylan Lades, where they used to be so fun to watch.
Yeah.
But they're halfbacks who were not good in the Green v Gold game, in all honesty, but do have oodles of potential. Yeah. Herschel Yankees and Damian Willemse, super young, capped Springboks.
Another two who will want to make the step. Like Herschel's already been in the Springbok camp as well, but Willemse has been in and around it. Obviously had a shocker last weekend, but he's another one scrambling for that in that vacuum, that pollardless vacuum. He's another one scrapping for it. So hopefully he can hit the ground running.
I think those two guys' form is going to be vital. Certainly, it's going to be huge if those two guys can be on song for the Springboks, and those two will be vital to get the Stormers ticking
for sure. And at fullback work, Halant as well.
Yes,
a very exciting player, very solid on the high ball. You'd like to see that solidity, and then maybe a bit of verve, and if he can link with Willemse and get distributing, get them wider. But I think if they're to win games, when they win games, it'll be built up front with that bruising pack setting the platform, and then giving those young halfbacks a chance to play with front foot ball. That's kind of what the Stormers' blueprint is. So that's what we expect to see from them, and then we will move on to the Lions. The Lions, shall we?
Yeah, the Lions have sort of faded away in the Razzie era. They were the best team for a few years in South Africa, and they made a couple of Super Rugby finals. Although sort of controversially, in its time, they managed to make a Super Rugby final without ever travelling to New Zealand, whatever way the schedule worked out.
A bizarre one,
But the Joe Bird franchise has sort of. It's faded away because of Razzie tightening everything up and focusing more on defence and everything else. But the Lions have a huge part to play, I think, in South African rugby, in making sure that the games don't look like the Green v Gold game that we saw on the weekend, where everything is too defensive, where they're not trying anything. They play at altitude and they run you around.
And
they try
from
and play
60 minutes on, those games get very open, especially if a team's slightly shy of fitness. The Lions can strike in that last quarter up in that altitude.
While it might not necessarily be the best thing for South Africa to have them be the very best team in Super Rugby, as they were for a few years, and Alistair Coetzee sort of tried to make a Bok team on that template, which never ever worked. But they do have a significant part to play, and punishing teams for not being offensive as well. If everyone else is getting too tight, the Lions can sneak up on you and run tries in. They don't anymore have a pack that's as big and strong. They do have Jaco Creel coming back in,
which is good,
but they don't have a pack that's as big and strong as some of these other teams.
The Stormers
full of Springboks.
The Stormers or the Bulls, the big Bulls this year.
But they're going to be fun. They're going to try and run the ball around. They're going to try and test these Springbok defences, and I think that them playing that nice offensive brand is going to be super key to the Springboks arriving at a balanced team in a month's time.
And big question marks over Elton Yankees as well in that 10 jersey. The other 10, the incumbent cover. And then you have the likes of Courtney Scosan as well. They've got nice flashy wingers as well who can run in, as you say, run in some nice tries.
Marvin Orey in the row did play in that, played quite well, in fact, in the Green v Gold game, so he's going to be crucial himself and Jaco Creel in terms of just keeping them alive in those games, making as many plays as
you can. They'll be the slighter pack in every fixture pretty much, so they'll be about
speed. They'll be about speed. The Lions will be about speed, and that's bad thing.
As will the Cheetahs, the other team, our Pro 14 friends, the Cheetahs. Very dynamic, very pacey team. a little loose as well. So kind of the same thing you could say about the Lions, although they play in a different comp. They tend to get wide. They tend to get fast. They play up in Bloemfontein. They're very
another
altitude team. They can be super dangerous. They have the likes of Bernard Jansen van Rensburg and Rhino Smith, dynamic player on the wing. They also have a very experienced Ruan Pinar at either 9 or 10, depending on where they play him. He's been a stalwart, such a consummate pro. He was a feature of Springbok teams a decade ago, and he's become an Ulster legend since then, a Montpellier legend.
Do you want to include him in your 10 conversation?
Yeah, I think he's in with a shout. If the point is they have Pollard, and the fear is it's Pollard and then a massive gulf in class, and then Yankees was dropped by the end of the World Cup in favour of 6-2 split, and France Steyn kind of half covering it. So that's where they're at now. Yeah, it doesn't preclude an experienced head like a Mornay Steyn or a Ruan Pinar stepping in. Yeah, sure.
Definitely have things to play for. Ruan in particular, they are going to have to bring the speed. The Cheetahs are an interesting one. We're going to touch on the Pro 16 obviously later in the show, and there's huge controversy surrounding that because they've decided to exclude the Cheetahs from their deal they've done with the Pro 14. Which has given them a massive chip on their shoulder. They've threatened to sue. Their fans are fuming. I hope that they have the talent to really put a dent in some of these sides, because they have such a point to prove. A side with a chip on its shoulder can be a really dangerous side,
for sure.
But I do, especially like we've been talking in recent times about the Pro 14 and the sort of the dwindling standard of that competition at times, and then you have meanwhile these teams who have been used to playing either test footy or Super Rugby against Kiwi sides. It is a phenomenal difference in terms of intensity, and I worry that the Cheetahs might be blown away by
it. Blown away for sure. They certainly they'll have to step up to do it, but that chip will make them plucky underdogs in most things, and definitely a factor that you can't be overlooked. If a side is looking past the Cheetahs will catch them, especially up in Bloemfontein.
We know that.
We know that very well as Leinster fans, for sure. And then the other two teams making up the numbers, not really. They're Currie Cup stalwarts. We have the Pumas and the Griquas. Teams we know less about. Obviously, they're not Super Rugby franchises. We'll only ever see them really in Currie Cups. And I think, was it the Pumas or the Griquas? One of them made a bit of a run at the beginning of the Currie Cup last year.
The Griquas, I think, I want to say, but I'm not sure.
They're very historic clubs, very proud and very physical as well. Like they're all good sides. Again, these are the world champions in South Africa, and there's a lot of good quality stuff from all the tiers down, and the Pumas and the Griquas are no mugs.
Yes, Pumas are based out in and now I'm going to be it's Bombela. I always get slagged off by South Africans in the comment section for how badly I pronounce their stuff. Bombela, I guess, or Mbombela Stadium in Mbombela, and then that's in the northeast of the country, actually near sort of Mozambique and Kruger National Park. And then they've got the Griquas, which are almost like a derby. It's in Kimberley is the name of the town, but it's near Bloemfontein, very near Bloemfontein. So it'd be a derby really when the Griquas play the Cheetahs.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's
they're the two teams I know least about in this competition, but I'm excited
for them to show us something. I think Currie Cup rugby, the bits of it you've seen, it's a step down from what they're bringing in Super Rugby. So I would worry for their ability to cope and keep up.
But then that being said,
maybe they will.
It's the beginning of the season for all of them here, and behind who knows which teams will be primed. It might be the case that on the first weekend you'll see some teams that are a few kind of stages of intensity, I guess, or have built a bit more and are therefore at a slightly higher level. Even if they're not as strong a team, you might catch a team that just hasn't warmed up into the heat of it yet.
You
don't know.
Maybe we'll see some stellar talent emerge in one of those sides.
This is true, potentially true too.
Springboks, who knows?
Yeah,
not us.
Not us yet, but keep an eye on them. But in terms of those are the teams anyway. But in terms of the questions of the tournament, obviously this is a preview. We're not going to preview the games in much detail because it's the first round of action. We're just going to kind of broadly say what we hope to see from it. And I think in terms of the style, we're kind of, it's a 17 comp, and there's a kind of a variety of styles in terms of the traditions of each of the
clashes of styles.
So styles make matchups, as they say, and there could be some good games. There could be some David Goliath type matchups where there's speed versus power, and like that's what you want from Springbok rugby. As you say, it's important for the teams like the Lions and the Cheetahs to be quick enough to keep those big big Springbok incumbents honest about what they're doing, not too defensive minded. Try and score your tries.
I think the Bulls and the Stormers particularly, it's what you've been talking about, tightening up, playing sharper, more disciplined, less loose, less soft rugby, using those big forwards to bully teams,
using them
playing
accurately.
Playing smart rugby, not being stupid with the ball, playing your strengths into the game and swallowing up your opposition. The Sharks sort of likewise, the Sharks made a name really in defence. They do have a good pack, they compete solidly. They don't have as many Springboks as some of these other sides, so they do have to be careful not to be caught in the physical battles, but defend, swallow up, kick well, and then hopefully, they have been leaning on that super back three, which is now all gone, as we say. But hopefully some of these guys coming in can maintain that sort of Sharks tradition of being very good at containing sides and then excellent at striking and countering and scoring some tries as well. So they have their own very unique style. And then the Pumas and the Griquas, I think again you're going to be hoping to see some speed there, because physically they're up against Springboks and that's just danger. You have to move them about.
You do.
Like the Lions and the Cheetahs, you'd love to see them playing the more offensive footy as well.
For sure. And then other than that, obviously we mentioned that Razzie has just kind of focused on tightening up the club side of it from top to bottom. He obviously had a job to do in 18 months to get the Springboks ready for the World Cup, and he did it pretty well considering they're now champions with the Webb Ellis Trophy back in South Africa. So now he's turned his focus to this club side, so it'll be an interesting kind of internal competition for him to kind of take stock of where they're at and try and from the top down implement that. That's what we're looking to see from this whole thing, just tighter, better, more professional rugby at the club level. That's
and
what you want to
the other
see.
big point as well is what does it mean for the Springboks? Are guys going to step up? You're in a questionable situation. Maybe I don't know how many they're going to have available in terms of how realistic it might be for someone like Faf de Klerk to go out. Maybe he will, because the Premiership season's wrapping up. He's done in Sale. Hopefully, I'm not sure if he has COVID or if he's contacted, but some of those guys are going to be able to come from the north to the south. But some of them may not. So they might have to build a team. They're missing Evan Etzebeth, they're missing Lou de Jager, they're missing possibly Peter Steff still,
Andre Pollard,
Franco Mostert,
Faf de Klerk,
Andre well, hopefully they'll have Faf back.
Marcel could see it.
Well,
he's in Ulster.
He's
available.
He could make the trip. But in terms of the team, they're going to have to build a lot of it from these guys. And while there are some good Springboks, there's definitely some room for jerseys to be filled.
Sure.
I think Gallant in the Stormers is going to be a good guy to look at. The 15 shirt is possibly his to lose. But there's other guys who could come in as well, who's going to... there's certainly room for a winger, obviously one, because Cheslin's the other one.
Cheslin is the one and one winger, yes.
There's room for a winger to step in if Mapimpi's off, and I'm not sure what Mapimpi's situation is, if he's loaned out to Japan, but I'm not sure if anything's going on in Japan right now. So possibly he's in. But you're going to just be keeping an eye on these guys and hoping against hope that guys
step
up and start to look like we saw in New Zealand. Who heard of Hoskins? Well, certainly not me. I'm sure there are plenty in New Zealand, but who heard of Hoskins and Tutu a year ago?
Exactly.
And these guys. That's sort of what the other dynamic you're hoping to see, as well as obviously what you're pointing at, the 10 battle.
The 10. Well, that's the last one I have here. It's just who's going to step up at 10. Geez, someone has to, because judging by that green v gold thing, the game the other day. Obviously they're rusty, but it's just if Pollard is their international caliber 10, and Frans Steyn is capable of doing the job, but ideally he won't play any minute. If they're in a competitive game at top level, they'll want Pollard at 10 for 80 minutes because they don't trust anyone else fully to do the job there. That has to change. So that's a big dynamic in this tournament, because there are lots of 10s that are going to be getting starting time. You're going to see Elton Yankees, Kerwin Bosch, Damien Willemse in kind of the young bracket, and then to keep them honest, you have Mornay Steyn and Ruan Pinar and the like, and Francois Steyn as well in there, all kind of jostling for that position. Hopefully one or two of them can make a step up and try and just reach another level of maturity. Like they're all young players. Certainly the three that I listed there, Willemse and Kerwin Bosch and Elton as well. They're at a plateau now. We'd love to see them kind of break through to another level of their game and find something that would be a really good storyline from this.
So keeping an eye on all that, but it's also from our perspective just fun rugby to enjoy. So very much looking for that kicking off on Friday evening. Up the South Africans. Good to have you back in World Rugby.
Absolutely. So, moving on now, we will take a look at English domestic rugby, which has been the source of some controversy here as the season reaches its denouement. And we've finally got, as you can see, our finalists there. And yes, the spanner in the works is Sale Sharks, who have, as we shoot this, it's Wednesday night. We were up in the air about our prep for all of this because it was unclear.
We didn't know the semi-final.
Yeah,
imagine how the coaches feel.
Yeah.
They're only a few days out from the semi-final, and they had them finalised this afternoon after Sale had to pull out of their last game.
Yes, they were scheduled to play Worcester. A win would have seen them get in there and knock Bath, I think, out.
Yes, that's right.
But they, through many positive COVID tests and some speculation about a breach of regulations and all this, and certainly Pat Lam has thrown shade, Rob Baxter, all of them have piled on.
Yeah.
So Northampton were unhappy because it happened in a midweek game with them. Seemingly some of their players were exposed and they had to forfeit their last game. Not that was important anyway. Yes, it's a bit of a mess. And to be honest, this whole approach to finishing the season has not been without its drawbacks for sure. They've powered through. They've gone through midweek fixtures, unprecedented. They've been doing Tuesday night games, Monday night games.
They've worked their player the bollocks off all of their players. They have, and they've had these midweek games. They've ran through an insane amount of games post lockdown.
Yeah,
they're still finishing their season here in October after everyone else is underway and it's supposed to be test time. They're not starting next season now until November.
Yeah,
the
European things aren't finalised until their fixture
they are now at last.
They are now at last. Yeah,
but yeah, it's sort of delayed everything, and it's made next season is going to be even more mad and more crammed.
Yeah,
and then they obviously had this COVID case, which, you know, in terms of handling it, has been like whatever about Sale Sharks. I don't know. Maybe they did go off and flout the regulations, and that's why they all have it, and yada yada yada. That's entirely possible.
And in which case, very bold. But
they're now a big cluster, but it's not as big a story as just like this whole rushing through thing in the Premiership has left them in this bizarre situation where like they were browbeating the Sharks, like, oh, can we play this game? No, they're just forfeited. It's what it is a bad incentive in terms of clubs. Like, there was a story out yesterday which was like, if there's one more positive case, you'll have to not play in the playoffs, Sale.
Yeah.
Which has ended up being, I think, what's happened.
Yeah.
But it's a crazy precedent to set where you're so crazy focused on rushing through the season that you won't even postpone a game. Can't be done. Can't postpone a game. We have to rush through this season, then we have to rush through next season, play every single game and have it done by X date.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little dysfunctional. I think it creates an incentive. There's certainly an incentive now if you're a Premiership club to
cover up your cases.
Well, even not test properly.
Yeah.
You know, oh God, like, Jesus, let's just have the people who are testing just in the nose, out of the nose, you're okay.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's all kinds of ways you can tip the scales, and it's a bad idea. By contrast, Munster had some positive cases, or a positive case, and a few guys had to self-isolate in their camp, and in the Pro 14 have made it very clear that if they can't play this weekend, the game will be rescheduled.
Yes.
There's no punishment for having COVID, because that creates a dysfunctional incentive, where testing is punished and not testing is rewarded,
which is obviously a bad thing.
So I just think again, English clubs and smarts, not really the Premiership organisation can be batshit at the best of times, but this was definitely a batshit story.
It was a crazy story, and what I feel for is Sale, because Sale were like, they only had to play Worcester. They probably would have hosed Worcester, let's be honest, and they would have been in, because they probably have been on balance a better team than Bath this year. And it's a shame because they will now miss out on the playoffs.
It's also a shame Bath gave up a 14-point lead against Saracens to draw the game and fall behind Bristol as it happened. They could have finished third, and they get away with it.
They do get away with it, which is pretty funny to think. But the bummer is for Sale, the likes of Faf and all of these guys who've worked really hard. They've become a better team this season. I'm excited to see them in top flight European rugby next season regardless, but your heart kind of goes out for them. The team they named for the Worcester team was thoroughly diminished and depleted anyway, so there's a question mark. Even if they won it, they probably wouldn't have competed with Exeter or whoever they would have had to play. So they're out anyway. It's finalised. It's these four, but just a bit unfortunate. It's kind of soured. It's a sour note for sure.
It is. I mean, it was always going to. It sucks that this is the way it happens. There was 5 great teams in the league this year, and Sale were one of them, and these 4 were the others.
Yeah.
And
Sarries were there as well.
Someone was going to have to miss out, and unfortunately, it was Sale.
Yeah.
So listen, we have our semi-finals at least.
Yeah, and the first of them, which we'll get into the preview now, is Wasps v Bristol, which will take place at the Rico, Wasps having earned second place and therefore have home advantage. It's going to be on Saturday, 10th of October, and kickoff is 1:30 p.m. Nice early afternoon game.
Yeah, both games on Saturdays. On Saturday, so we have that going. Wasps Bristol, man, this is a good
exciting
game.
Fixture. They both play lovely footy.
Yeah, indeed. Listen to this. They played in the Rico Arena September 13th. 59-35 it finished in favour of Wasps.
Yeah.
Now there was a few changes in the Bristol team, but I mean these teams are going hell for leather. Wasps are in insane form.
Yeah.
They've won 8, I think, of 9 games.
Jimmy Gopperth playing fantastic footy for them at the moment with 10.
They've-
Marshalling things. He dominated Saracens
He's
a few weeks ago.
playing at 12 a lot of the time as well
Yeah.
with Fekitoa,
Yeah.
and they have Jacob Umonga in at 10 as well. It's a lovely balanced team, and they play just ruthless attacking rugby. They've been racking up scores on all kinds of teams, Exeters and Saracens. Won 8 of 9 games since lockdown. A thoroughly delicious centre pairing in Jimmy Gopperth and Fekitoa that is just opening teams up. That like the box office of this game knows no bounds. Radra up against Fekitoa as we have up there.
Yeah.
That's
Such a
battle
dynamic.
in the 13 channel with teams that love to play wide and love to attack. Literally on O&D, that is one of the crucial battles, and they're two awesome players in great form. And Radra, one of the European, despite not playing in the Champions Cup, he's nominated for European Player of the Year.
Yes,
it's been so
which
good.
I'm not sure if that's ever happened before.
No,
It's
yeah.
awesome, but he is a one of a kind kind of player. And there's a lot to love about Bristol's team as well. Pat Lam has them playing with such verve and optimism. Callum Sheedy's form over the last few
Much better,
years,
yeah.
unbelievable, yeah, and he's earned himself a Wales call up for it. It's very exciting. But they both try and play with tempo and verve, and it'll be just curious to see who gets the better of it. One of the bad news bits for Wasps is that they've lost. They are suffering a bit of an injury crisis, but one of the big ones is Joe Lashbury, Captain Joe, who is their rock solid platform off the line out, as well as a big hefty unit. He's like your quintessential English lock forward. He's very industrious, very physical, does a lot of work for them. It'll be tough to see them adjust without that. He's such a stalwart for them. But that being said, they still have the likes of Thomas Young, Brad Shields in the back row, kind of dynamic players to try and make some plays happen.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they have what they have is just they have a lovely shape and a lovely confidence, and they're scoring and they're creating line breaks and finishing tries all as a unit. I mean, Shields is involved in that. Gopperth, Fekitoa, as we've talked about, but the whole team has had just a lovely balance to it in recent times. They've obviously, like everybody, they've had to transition guys in and transition guys out. But they managed to do so pretty seamlessly, and all of them really on the same wavelength as far as finding tries. You got Manozzi, Kibarigi actually at 14 has been really good for them. But they're all hunting tries. They're all on the same wavelength, and they're playing with pace, which is crucial as well. So, like Bristol, it's a team that's hunting tries. Only arguably they've been doing it more efficiently.
Yeah, possibly true. Certainly since lockdown, because they've been in stellar form. When they have the ball, obviously they will be looking to attack them out wide and through the middle. It'll be curious to see just which pack gets on top in the tight as well, because I think both of them have been victim of a bit of bullying on occasion. You'd have to kind of edge the home team and the form team
It's just
with that, but
the form. That is the sort of interesting dynamic in it, is that Bristol have, they have Chris Vui obviously plays for Samoa, but he can be a brilliant lock when he's at his best. Stephen Luatua is a rangy character who's very
and a really
useful
good stalwart for them.
But I think actually the crucial area where they'll be looking to edge it, and it's an interesting battle. You got in Wasps colours, you got Thomas Young and Shields, but in Bristol colours you got Nathan Hughes, obviously former Wasps man, and at number 8, and you got Ben Earl at 7. And both of those guys are really hunting an English jersey. They're possibly losing ground a little bit, but Ben Earl in particular has had a great season. He's super physical, he's disruptive at the breakdown, he's a determined ball carrier and an awesome defender. So I think that Ben Earl in particular could be a game changer for Bristol in terms of edging that forward battle and getting on top of it.
Ideally, yes.
But I really do think this is going to be a shootout.
For sure, and just like speaking of defensive responsibilities for Wasps, obviously it's going to be a shootout. We're going to look at how both sides, or like we looked at briefly there at how Wasps are going to try and attack. Obviously, get their Umaga and Gopperth getting them distributing, Umaga even and Gopperth distributing, Fekitoa hitting lines. They want to bring speed.
And this battle right here, like Ranradra is one of the best offensive players perhaps we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But on defence, he's had his moments. Like he can shoot out a line. Sometimes he can lose focus. And with a guy as sharp as Fekitoa and a couple of distributors as sharp as Umaga and Jimmy G. They're going to be looking to put Fekitoa into space and looking to exploit perhaps some of Ranradra's worst tendencies if he can switch off.
Yes.
So that's definitely a fun dynamic, and I think Wasps will back themselves to attack that channel
for sure.
And obviously this big man may rise to the occasion on D as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like how do you defend that if you're Bristol?
If you're Bristol, well, it involves reining in your instincts and making good reads and good tackles from the point of view of Ranradra. Like it involves.
Certainly it could be game killing because both Fekitoa and Ranradra are guilty of the South Sea Island not stooping too high collision, which is getting overly not overly, it's getting punished these days. It's getting cards. It's a red card automatically if it's a thing, and it has to be mitigated down. So you want to see proper tackle technique. Actually, Fekitoa had a textbook tackle a few weeks ago of shooting up out of the line and getting right under the rib cage and just stuffing a play. You want to see that. You want to see good reads and good technique, because if it's a little loose, and that's what with the pace of both of these teams, it is a likely scenario because both teams are trying to play fast and wide. When you're reaching for a tackle, you're more inclined to be a little sloppy, especially if you're a big cumbersome lock forward finds himself in the wide channels. Just rein that arm in. Don't go reaching, because you could a yellow card sin bin period. Both of these teams will back themselves to execute against 14 men.
The thing that Pat Lam has to be talking to his boys about now over the next couple of days as well is 59 points the last time they played Wasps. 59 points conceded. Now there were some changes, but they have to defend much, much better. They have to, first of all, in the tight areas, they cannot soft out of contacts. No. They have to be up in Wasps' face, making it awkward for them. Ben Earl, as we say, getting in there.
See the likes of Nathan Hughes step up, because certainly with ball in hand, he's a very enthusiastic runner and grinner. You'd like to see him put his weight around a bit more on D for sure, and he'll need to.
I think this is a huge little litmus test here against this very good informed Wasp side. This is a good litmus test for both of those guys, Ben Earl and Nathan Hughes, as far as their England credentials are concerned. Yeah. You know, they may miss out on the squad. There's such competition in the back row now in England that's intimidating for both of those guys. And, you know, this is definitely a big challenge. They can make a Premiership final, make a statement, manage to knock off a really informed, great-looking side when they're in their home ground in the semi-final at their pump. That's the huge challenge, and I think that is the area where they have to get up. But then also Bristol just at times can be, you know, sort of like an old school Super Rugby team, just a little too happy to have it turn into a shootout where you don't offer enough on D and you just want the ball back so you can attack it. You know, they need to not let Wasps get cheap scores. They need to get into their face. They need to harass Umaga. They need to make Gopperth make his decisions much quicker. And obviously Ranradra needs to just shut Fekitoa down, just always be in his face and never give him an inch.
That's got to be the game plan for them. It's definitely possible. They will be up for it. They will be up for it is one thing. Like their progression, Bristol's progression over the last few years has been stellar. Pat Lam has brought them back up from the Championship. They competed well in their first year up without quite making the grade, and now here they are a season later in the playoffs. It's fantastic stuff. It's a brilliant journey. It's pretty impeccable stuff. This is a tough test for them now in the Rico against a really informed Wasps.
It is a tough test, and the key to it, as with all Pat teams, we want to see them shut them down, but where they make their name is in attack, and they move the ball really, really well. It's very
Randall Sheedy, very quick, nippy halfback combination.
It's very All Black based. You know, he just gets players in the distribution roles. It's interesting when Randall and Sheedy, they have very little responsibility on their shoulders. All that they're doing is supplying a tempo for Pat Lam's guys to play with their instincts. He pushes. He does have good shape to him. He puts guys like Luatua, rangy back rowers out in the wing, and he tries to move it around. But basically, he's just going wide with tempo, and then trusting his guys to get to execute and exploit the good matchups when they get them.
For sure.
Like Radradra as well. Like from a Wasps point of view on defence, fronting up against Radradra is obviously crucial, and sometimes his worser instincts can kick in on the ball, and he can look for that contact perhaps a little too much, instead of sucking in and moving the ball on. But when he's at his best, he's just brilliant and so difficult to contain, and so great at isolating the weak points and getting runners on the ball. And they're getting really, really good at playing off him. They're getting really good at running off him, expecting that offload.
Yeah, well, their support lines, actually, both of these sides hit great support lines. That's why they tend to score such lovely tries and such high-scoring games. They are very, very adept at scoring. So where it could come down to is little factors like the defense getting an edge or the set piece. We haven't quite mentioned the set piece. Both of these teams have pretty good assets in that area. Certainly Sinclair has been a great acquisition for Bristol this year. He really has added a bit of a grit to their scrum that was definitely lacking last season.
Yeah, and the engine room is missing Joe Launchbury from a Wasps point of view.
That's true. They will fancy attacking that scrum.
Sinclair's a nice aggressive scrummager from tight edge. You're getting more and more of those these days, and yes, certainly they should be looking to get an edge there.
Yes, for sure. That's one area where you may notice Launchbury's gap in Wasps is if they do start getting that edge at scrum time, it'll be there.
Well, Launchbury's crucial at line-out, but with or without him, their line-out maul has been pretty great. And actually, if you watch back that game, that 59-35, there were a good few successful mauls that Wasps had against the Bristol pack. So that'll be an area Wasps will be really going for as well.
Target for it. And
big job for Bristol to try and shut down.
The likes of Vui has to get his hands in there, and it's a tough ask. He can be very good
at times.
Otherwise, he can be very loose. If they're getting if Wasps are edging it, that's when the penalties and the looseness will come in. The other question mark is Thacker. Like, I have a lot of time for Thacker. I like his hustle at 2 for the hooker for Bristol. He's great in the loose, industrious. He just he moves like a turbo hobbit or a Duracell bunny, but he plays miss him. He drops balls every now and then. Certainly his line out darts can be suspect at times.
He had one bad play, which I think probably is the one that initially turned him against you, where he was in the open field and he had a 2-on-1 with Radradra picking an inside line, and he dummied it. He tried to dummy and take the outside and just got tackled and blew the chance.
That's no good. But I can see why Pat likes him, because he's honest as the day is long. Works very, very hard. Runs all day long, which is lovely for a hooker. Question mark over the darts. He'll need to be accurate. They do like to play off the top of the line out a bit, to give them space out wide to set that tempo. So he'll need to be on it. It's a semi-final, finals footy. They all need to be on it.
In terms of how you think it's going to play out.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a ding-dong battle. It won't be as high-scoring as the previous fixture with the 59. Obviously, it's semi-finals footy.
Both offences will get plays off and score tries.
Yes, I think there will be tries for each team. I am going to vote with my heart and say that Bristol get the job done, because I am a Bristol fan for the remainder of the season. I really want them to go the whole way and do it. They're my favourite team of the bunch left. And plus, just like Pat Lam, I love the soul of the club, whereas Wasps, I've had my problems with the Rico Arena, the casino funding it, all of that stuff. I'm not a huge Wasps fan, but there's no denying that they play some lovely footy and they're in great form. I probably make Wasps slight favourites, even though I think Bristol are going to do it.
I think probably Wasps. I think the biggest deciding factor is whether or not Ben Earl in particular can really get on top of the Wasps pack. But with Thomas Young and Brad Shields in there, I think Wasps are just playing that bit sharper and that bit crisper, and I don't know if Bristol's defence is as good as Wasps' defence. And I think Wasps might, especially with their better halfbacks as well. Jimmy Gopperth in at 12 is probably the best 10 on the pitch. I just think I expect them to play the smarter footy, the sharper footy, and just to edge that contest, if I'm honest. That's my thought.
Okay. Well, hopefully.
But I think it'll be a shootout. I think there'll be tries both sides. I think there'll be at least one moment for each of these guys when they're in the open space. And I dare say there'll be fun highlights.
I think it'll be, as far as highlights are concerned, I think it'll be the marquee fixture.
No
for sure.
question.
But with that, we will move on.
Yes.
And the next semi-final we have is Exeter v Bath. Exeter, the front runners all season. They streaked ahead when Sarries were bumped points, and they haven't really relinquished that number one spot at all. They are the favourites going in,
no question,
unquestionably. Again, up against Bath, and Bath, despite like at the start of the season, I was saying I will not root for Bath until they fix their pitch at the Rec. I still maintain that they should fix their pitch. But one thing I will say for them is that since lockdown, they have made some really nice acquisitions, and in particular at scrum half, Ben Spencer, former Sarri, massive poach, has given them such impetus and such much more speed, and him with Priestland. That's an international caliber.
Finally fit for a consistent period of time, Reece Priestland.
Yes.
And you can finally see a bit of control in the Bath game.
Yeah.
Also,
because they've always been physical. They always had that they had their Francois Lowe Underhill combination at the beginning of the season, which was enough in the Rec in the mud to dominate a lot of teams.
Yeah, which is now Underhill with Falatau, who's fit for them as well, and has a few games under his belt as well, who's also a classy player.
Yeah.
So they are nice and physical. They do have world class talent in their back row.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have the tools. Always, if you have those guys, you have the tools to cause upset.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, they have killers in the back three, which which obviously I really like.
Yes.
McConaughey, Rocketaguni, and Anthony Watson.
Yeah.
Dynamic
That's a super
players.
back three.
Lovely. Those guys will finish. They'll finish scores if you give them.
Yeah.
And they have been.
100%. And they have been. They've looked much better, much sharper since lockdown. They've earned their place in this. They've had to fight. They were in the battle to make this playoff thing, and they earned it.
They earned just about
by the skin of their teeth. They got a scare from Sarri's there.
Totally.
But here they are.
They got a great back row with controlling halfbacks and finishers on the wings and at fullback. That's almost as much as your spine of the team. That's your spine of the team. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But in the actual spine, in the front row, in the tight, that's where Exeter are going to be.
Exeter are a different animal in terms of like just compared to all the teams in the Premiership apart from Sarri's. Exeter just seem to get that edge on up front. As far as the colour is concerned, like Exeter are fighting a war on two fronts, which could affect them. They do have a Champions Cup final to look forward to for their first time ever.
Of the double.
They are very close to the double, which, as we know, can shoot them in the foot. It's still conceivable that they blow both of those and end up with nothing, which would be a very grim look to the season altogether. But I think the more likely is that they come away with at least one of those trophies. This is a game I would make them favourites in. They are just so physical and efficient, especially when they get into 22. They know exactly what they're doing, and at the Premiership level, it just always seems to be enough to deal with teams, especially in Sandy Park. They just know how to go through phases and break teams.
Exeter's baseline in terms of how they want to use the ball is their sort of monstrous forward pack. They're very good. We've seen and we've complimented and also derided at times the sort of the brutal efficiency with which they conduct themselves when they enter the red zone.
Yeah.
They just chop away. It's sort of like we were talking about with the All Blacks earlier and the Wallabies. Like, there's almost value in what they do in the sense that they can drain a team physically, mentally, emotionally at times just before scoring the try. Yeah. They build it very slowly. They make you defend your goal line for ages and ages. It's a very draining thing to do on a rugby pitch. It's one of the most, especially for forward packs, it's one of the most tough positions to be in is when you're on your own goal line, constantly having to make tackles of big men.
Yeah.
And they're so efficient at doing it. They mind the pill so well. They take their time and they find the try and they punish teams, and that's sort of the baseline that they have in terms of offense.
That's where they've been
find
for the last
their territory.
Few years. One of the things they've discovered in the last season through mainly Henry Slade. It's not really their halfbacks, Maunder and I'm not sure who's the other one. Maunder is their 10, and there's
not Simmons anymore.
Simmons, Simmons and Maunder. But it's actually Slade at 13 who offers that wide channel distribution now, because they've acquired Hogg. Stewie Hogg, who gives them a bit of attacking dimension. Noel, obviously a fantastic player on the wing as well. Flaherty has been brilliant off kick return as well. They've added strings to their bow, but it's obvious that when they get to the 22, their instincts kick in, and they are also well drilled and physical. They will pummel this Bath team into submission once they get there. But they need to be creative in the middle of the field in terms of how they get into the 22.
They've got to we obviously don't have the teams yet, but I'm assuming Jonathan Joseph is the man for 13 for Bath. That matchup Slade against Joseph is massive. Is massive potential if you're Exeter. They do have lethal guys out wide. Joseph has at times been suspect in defence. Even putting big men down that channel, getting them sucked in. There's a myriad ways they can work that to their advantage, and I think they will do that.
They do it.
Outside of that, in terms of when they have the ball, I think their priority needs to just be to make sure that Underhill isn't a factor. Which means minding the ball, keeping an eye on him. This is an old school offensive play where you've got one killer, you're David Pocock, is their key man on defence. You have a couple of guys who are instructed to watch him like hawks to make sure if he enters the ruck, he's gone and he's sore for doing it. Obviously, you have to do that legally, but that is a crucial element to getting on top of that pack.
It's really the one thing that Bath can do to stymie them. Other than like, if Bath can start dominating some collisions versus them, then it becomes a bit more of a scrap. But Exeter are so good at especially in the 22, just resourcing that, and they just have so many tools to both exit and force their way into the 22. Their kicking game is so varied. Like with Slade again at 13, they have the two halfbacks. They have Slade at 13. They have Stewie Hogg outside him. All of whom are legitimate.
Not to mention most of what they do is box kick, especially from exits. So they do have that element as well.
Exactly.
So absolutely, a rake load of options with the boot, and enough to keep any defence occupied
and honest all day.
But don't kick loose, because Anthony Watson will punish it. So if they make errors, they are there to be punished. And they've actually had back-to-back losses since their semi-final win over Toulouse. Now they have made some rotation.
The form guide.
Some back-to-back losses is not a good thing to be bringing into a semi-final.
No, it's not at all. And it is a semi-final, and the nerves and the butterflies could come into effect. You never know.
Especially with a team that's perennial bridesmaids cast in the role of front-runner.
Yeah. We know all about it as Ireland fans. That can leave you unstuck, and against a dangerous and coming Bath team. I think this Bath team have really found a way forward. They were stuck in the doldrums for so many years. They were such an ugly team with a style that was slow and bludgeoning and yet ineffective. Whereas now with this international caliber halfback combination and a few stars out in the wide channels, they can turn turnovers into tries. They can attack you. They will hope to upset the apple cart here. They'll be away, but if they can grab a lead early on, they can start to make Exeter sweat a little. Which is exactly what they want to do.
Bath are a good team. They're also sort of a fundamentals team. They're still stuck with their halfbacks control the pace. Their forwards get on top. Then they move it out wide, and their wingers finish.
And
it's as
old school rugby.
It ain't broke, don't fix it. But the key there is that how they get on top of teams, how they make their space out wide, apart from on chaos situations, is by getting on top up front. And that is the key job, really, if you're Exeter's defence. Just not letting their big guys, Yules, who usually has his own way in the lock, usually bullies whoever he's up against. They're up against bigger men this week, your Johnny Grays who make a million tackles. Is he going to get on top? Is he going to start bullying Yules? By contrast, Falatau, can he get anything off? Underhill with ball in hand. If Exeter can swallow those guys up, they're going to stop Bath at source and have them kicking it, and then they
slowly
feel
dominate the game.
Happy to edge the kicking battle then.
It's one of those ones. Exeter have more ways to win than Bath, so Bath really need to play out of their skin away from home to get this result. They'll probably need to have a few things go their way in the first 20 and then manage to hold on. I think it's the less likely result, but I still think it's there for them. It's semi-final footy, and then just in terms of set piece. But Exeter will look to put squeeze on Bath at scrum time, but Bath, compared to other Bath have had a good scrum compared to other Premiership teams. It's always seems to be the way though that when you come up against this Exeter side,
it's another level, especially in that tight area. Exeter have 4 just aggressive world-class scrummaging props. And they
have in Cowan Dickey they have a very good aggressive scrummager at 2 as well. It's
but they've a lot of heft and some excellent scrummagers, and clearly an excellent scrummaging coach. But it's a hell of a task. Hepburn and Williams coming at you. It's not an enviable task for any scrum. If Bath can lock it down, they'll be happy
for sure.
Likewise, I think off the top, from Bath's point of vieue, it is about first of all making the game about what they want the game to be about. So the kicking game of Ben Spencer and Priestland, as well as the tempo they bring, is going to be vital in terms of moving that Exeter pack around. And then obviously they need their guys when they're put in space. McConaughey is brilliant.
He's lethal,
possibly the most exciting. Well, Watson's maybe the most exciting. English international, brilliant. But McConaughey possibly the more exciting of their wingers. Getting those guys in space is vital. And the link between your Priestlands and your Spencers and that back 3 outside of box kicks and such is Jonathan Joseph. And I think on both sides of the ball, his matchup with Slade, we often talk about the 13 matchups because it opens the door to the back 3. I think that matchup is crucial, and I think it'll be very interesting to see what kind of performance Jonathan Joseph puts on. Can they move Exeter around? Can he get some footwork going? Can he look like the Jonathan Joseph that burst into an English team and get on top of Exeter?
Nice.
That's where the space is.
If Bath are to win it, it needs to go that way. There need to be a few moments like that where it needs to just happen for them. Because I think on balance, if it becomes a tight contest, Exeter with the superior pack will win it. Forwards win games, backs decide by how much. Exeter have a really good knack of especially in the Premiership, making the game be about what they want it to be about, and ultimately grinding teams into the dust, which is what they do in Sandy Park routinely. It's only a handful. Gloucester have occasionally done them. But
and that's what Bath like. As long as you've got that back three, you've got the puncher's chance, because those guys will score tries.
Yeah.
So if you can contain Exeter, defend them as best you can, chop them, don't let them get on top of you. But crucially, from a Priestland and Spencer point of view, and even to a lesser extent the likes of Watson and Joseph, can they put Exeter in the right areas of the field? Can they play with better discipline? Can they isolate perhaps O'Flaherty and the like, turn him, get the ball over his head, make sure Exeter are exiting, getting their caterpillar ruck going, make sure the game is stop-start, and then strike when the opportunity comes, as opposed to giving away the silly penalty or falling off the sloppy tackle and finding themselves exactly where they don't want to be, which is in Exeter in their own red zone.
So for sure, when it's kick tennis in the middle or just going across between the two tens, like, don't give the penalty away then, because Exeter will kill you. First they'll kick to the corner, then they'll hold the pill for 10 minutes, and then they'll score the try at the end of the 10 minutes, and you'll have two men down and shattered. You'll have to sub off Underhill. All of that's that's the picture Exeter can paint, and it's on on Bath even to try and avoid that and
on Priestland especially to really make sure that he gets on top of that kicking game and that he's not aimless with
kicking
his
game and passing game as well. I'd like to see them attack. They need to be the more ambitious side, because they're the underdogs and they're away from home. They need to strike. So if they can, then it'll be an interesting contest. That being said, I'm backing Exeter.
Exeter for me.
I think Exeter are going to win this one. So with that, we will move on. And just the next, we have a few other domestic rugby. Obviously, there's been a lot of rugby to talk about. It's been a pretty stacked show, but we're just briefly going to mention a few other interesting games that are just likely to be good games of footy.
These are just our games from around the world. There's other domestic games going on, and so there's a couple of picks from the top 14. Racing Toulouse. Box office,
quality teams, attacking teams, really good teams.
Just lots of fun. This was this actually exact fixture was the Heineken Cup quarterfinal last season, not this season of coronavirus, but the season prior. And it was one of the best games I've ever seen in European rugby. It was all attacking flair. Try scoring here, try scoring there, try scoring everywhere.
Yes,
and
indeed.
Both of these teams are just as honest as the day is long and play gorgeous skills-based offensive footy, so that is a fun game to watch.
And similarly, but it possibly a level below in terms of just the calibre of the sides, but Bordeaux v Clermont. Clermont, one of our favourite teams of all time, lovely staunch traditionalist, love everything about the club, love the way they play the game, just all the time in the world for Clermont Auvergne. But Bordeaux Begley, one of the finds, their game against Bristol was an absolute humdinger in the semi-final of the Challenge Cup. They play lovely attacking footy themselves. They have some exciting players in there. Ben Lamb, those Super Rugby fans will remember for sure.
Absolutely, that's a game worth watching. There's box office action to be had there.
A
couple of other games. The Pro 14, not too much exciting going on this weekend. Our boys Leinster obviously away in Benetton. Cardiff are playing Connacht, and I just highlighted that match because
both teams play attacking footy again.
I was very excited by Connacht last week, and I thought their game with Glasgow was excellent, and I think Pro 14 has been lacking a little bit, as you may have heard us complain, in terms of standard, but Connacht have been driving a very nice standard. They're playing a good tempo-filled game. And Bundy Aki, for Irish fans and Kiwi fans, former Chiefs fans out there, is in the form of his life. He looks brilliant, and he's taking ownership of games in a way that possibly he hasn't done ever. And he looks trim and fit and yet physical.
For sure.
So he's a joy to watch right
Tom
now.
Farrell beside him looks exciting, and Marmion. There's a lot to love about Connacht, and Cardiff as well have been a growing force over the last few years. Both of them love broken field running and attacking rugby, so that promises to be a pretty decent game. And then also you have Glasgow and Scarlets. also two attacking teams with a tradition of running. That being said, Scarlets did not. They kicked 27 points worth of penalties last week and lost in the final play. So hopefully they'll rediscover their roots.
That was what we were talking about earlier with the 3-pointers. They dominated that game to a farcical degree, and Munster were just giving away penalty after penalty after penalty, and they kicked every one of them. They never attacked. They never even threatened the try line. And then Munster just needed to come into it for a little bit, and then bang, they turned it around. They scored tries and they won the game.
Yeah.
And it's a lesson that isn't learned in this hemisphere, but perhaps should be by Scarlets. But yeah, Glasgow Scarlets is traditionally one of the more fun games in the Pro 14.
Yeah.
Also taking place this weekend.
Yeah.
And there's also Mitre 10 action in New Zealand,
yes.
obviously without their internationals, but there's a rake load of games to enjoy.
Not too many to list, but yeah, for sure, Mitre 10 Cup footy can be very exciting. That being said, the last one I watched was a rainy day game, which was interesting to see. It's obviously winter over there, or well, it's kind of coming into summer now as well.
It's spring.
Should be spring, yeah,
over there.
But it was a wet weather game that I was watching anyway. But for the most part, some really high class, high quality footy in New Zealand always, and the Mitre 10 is a good watch as well.
No question.
So with that, we will move on to just one more little interesting tidbit. We mentioned it earlier on. The Pro 16, the Guinness Pro 16. It's not going to be this year, obviously. We're underway and the SAFA teams aren't there, including the Cheetahs are withdrawn and the Southern Kings are no more. But from next year on, the Super Rugby franchises have made the decision to come north and join the Pro 14, making it Pro 16.
The South African Rugby Union has made the decision to sort of put them in there. And so as it will be... the 4 Super Rugby sides, the 4 biggest sides in South African Club Rugby, are as of now to move to the Pro 14 starting from next season.
Yeah, exciting.
Now the implications of this are perhaps massive, and this is a potentially huge shift in global rugby, and so I think the conversation can be broken down into 2 little segments. First of all, from our own sort of narrow enough perspective, what's this going to mean for the Pro 14? What's this going to mean for European
Only
rugby?
Good things.
Yeah, well,
that's my take.
And we'll get into that probably, right. And then what will the implications of this be, the broader implications in terms of how the World Rugby calendar and everything else is going to look as a result of this.
Yeah.
So firstly, just the competition itself, as you say, it needed something new.
Well, we as Leinster fans were delighted by our unbeaten season in the domestic comp this year. It's obviously an unprecedented great achievement. It was also 3 in a row, which is fantastic too. But it has to be caveated by saying the standard was pretty poor this year, and that's for a few reasons. Glasgow have lost a few key players, weren't quite the force they were a few seasons ago. Edinburgh have actually improved, but we're coming from a baseline lower. Scarlets have disimproved. Ospreys fell off a cliff form-wise. They only got 17 points last season and were completely hopeless. Benetton have improved, but Zebra are still hopeless. Ulster are alright. Munster are kind of treading water. Connacht play exciting footy but don't tend to win. The Cheetahs didn't quite make the grade either. It wasn't a great competition standard wise. It was a step down from like Premiership rugby or Top Couture's rugby, which hasn't been the case in seasons gone by. There was an argument a few seasons ago that maybe the Pro 14, especially with the injection of the 2 SAFA teams initially, there was a bit of tempo to that tournament. There was a lot of exciting footy, and it was reflected in Europe as well, where in the Champions Cup. Whereas this season, no, there were only 2 Pro 14 sides that made it through to the quarterfinals, and they were both beaten soundly. And that is kind of reflective of where the league is at. So it definitely needs an injection of something new, and this would be it. It would bolster the quality. It would mean that teams like Munster can't sleepwalk through a season without really playing any rugby and still get a semi-final out of it.
It would definitely, having guys like we listed the South African teams earlier when we were talking about guys like even Bongia Manambi and Stephen Kitshoff and Dwayne Vermeulen, obviously, and Sia Khaleesi. These are world champions, superstar, especially in the forward pack, but also in the backs in terms of the defending that they're bringing. It's going to be a harsh lesson for some of these teams when the South African teams do come in terms of what actually grants you what actually is needed to be done to break down a team, what's needed to be done to dominate up front. The South African teams are going to bring just a whole new dynamic, and it's going to drive the standard right up, and perhaps to the detriment of some of the sides you just listed for at least the short term. But it's good to learn. It's good to learn lessons in your domestic league, and it's not good to be able to tread water unpunished for seasons on end, dwindling,
Yeah.
without getting those harsh lessons. Although Leinster divvy them out often enough, the teams just aren't punished enough. And I definitely think an increase in standard is a good thing.
Yeah.
The challenge is important.
For sure.
And definitely from that point of view, it's massive.
Yeah.
From a logistics point of view, there's a couple of interesting questions. First of all, 16-team competition. When it was 14, they divided it into a couple of conferences.
Yeah.
This is a curiosity now because you've so many different nations.
Yeah.
Obviously, the hope would be, and God knows, but the hope would be that the COVID time will have passed come the beginning of next year.
Touch wood.
But God knows, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the big question mark is how you actually orchestrate that. Do you put, what will be 4 South African teams in their own conference, all together with, some poor unsuspecting 4 Welsh teams, and then have the other teams make up the other conference? Or do you try and mix it up and make it be fairer? And in which case you have this sort of clustered, staggered, perhaps Super Rugby system, where, teams are playing all over the place. Some derby games are lacking, and how many games can you actually reasonably play in a season?
Do you do 2 big conferences, which would add games already, or do you do 3 conferences, a South African conference and 2 others? I don't know. These are all question marks. Do you still keep the semi-final final system? Do you go quarter semi-final? All of these are
you probably do go quarter semi-final with your 14 teams in a league.
Yeah.
Or you do like a 6-team playoff system where you have 2 teams with a bye.
Yeah.
It's possibly more likely. I think 2 conferences is possibly the most natural, but whatever it will be, I'm curious to see, because the danger is getting it wrong, like they did in Super Rugby, and diminishing the competition for that reason, which was a real shame to see, just how with the introduction of the Sun Wolves in those few years that it was an 18-team comp, it was just such a mess that nobody could get on board with it.
Well, if
like you say, we had the Lions made a Super Rugby final without ever travelling to New Zealand,
and
it was just
is folly. Like they said, that's wrong, obviously.
And likewise, it shouldn't be okay for an Irish team to make a Pro 14 final without ever travelling to South Africa.
Indeed, which it has been in the last few seasons as well.
Yeah.
So no, for sure that all of that needs to be balanced and weighed. It's a slightly easier job. It is 16 teams rather than 18 teams. They are capable of doing it, and the time difference isn't that much as well. Like it won't be that affecting. What's more interesting and logistically for South Africa is just the December January fixtures.
Yeah.
The height of summer over there, are they tenable in there? Possibly later kickoffs?
I remember we were talking to Don about that from Unbiased Rugby recently, and what he had said on it was you might have to play the games in the evening because there's times when it'd be like 30 degrees, 100% humidity.
Yeah.
Very, very warm. High summer in South Africa is serious.
Yes.
And not to mention the stark contrast between January in South Africa
and January in Edinburgh or Glasgow.
Or Belfast.
Or Belfast,
and Dublin.
Yeah.
The contrast is phenomenal, and that's obviously its own dynamic and its own factor.
I don't necessarily hate it though. I in fact like that Richard Cockrell's Edinburgh will have to get themselves out of Murrayfield and play at altitude against this pacey team.
Well,
it'll be good enough for them.
It'll kill them, but
yes.
the heat is a real issue, and one wonders if they could do even an evening game or a nighttime game.
They probably would
or
have
all
to,
kinds of mad stuff.
But also from a South Africa, a Springbok point of view, the clash of the question of the calendar as well. This is where we get into the implications of it, where like as it stands, and Don again to cite, he was mentioning that he'd like to join the Pro 16 and stay in the Rugby Championship, which. It's possible.
Yeah, what we'd said at the time was surely not. You have to play in coordination with your club footy, and this is, as you say, where the broader implications come in. Where there's so many potential directions this can veer off into.
Yeah.
And I think the first question is, again, balls in your court, South African rugby. What's your feeling on where you want to play your test matches?
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, Don over at Unbiased Rugby said to us that his feeling was he'd like to play European club rugby, but he wouldn't particularly feel the allure of the Six Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether the financial aspect of the Six Nations might tip the scales in the powers that be in South Africa rugby will be a huge factor. Because you would think maybe playing domestic rugby, playing international rugby with their own time zones, with actually less travel, with teams that don't stylistically match up that well against the Springboks, give them a chance to win tournaments and maybe make it it might make a little more sense than the competition where they're going from over the Indian Ocean to over the Atlantic Ocean all the time.
Yes.
With the possibility of Japan possibly joining that competition and even adding more travel to it. Maybe South Africa, especially with the financial incentives, will back that route. But it is possible. Like it is possible that they decide for at least the short term we're going to play. We're entering our Cheetahs side in Super Rugby, and we're going to play these guys as our main focus in the Pro 14. But we are still in with Sanzar and playing our test rugby there. In which case the season has just a mad old shape to it. Like they're going to have to get used to, starting their club season. I mean, the club season in the Pro 14 starts midway through, or perhaps even towards the start of
September,
the
October,
Rugby Championship. Which often kicks off in August and runs straight through to October. And then they might come back for maybe a week before the November internationals. So you're talking about a whole heap of the season where they're not even playing for their clubs to begin with. Then they come back, play with their club from December through to May. Which is fine, and then they can take a month off because the summer window's been pulled back to July. And then they enter pre-season only to play for the Springboks straight away. Right through the Rugby Championship. They could possibly put a Currie Cup on at that stage if they wanted to. And then rejoin the clubs after that again.
It's a curious dynamic.
It's definitely a very, very strange dynamic, and I can't really imagine it working. But that's the factor that
it'll mean they'll ship a load of early results while they're missing their Springboks in the early season perhaps, but then dominate during the Six Nations
that's
time.
True.
All of these things are factors.
But I just don't know about entering pre-season right before
an
pre-seasoning for an international window, and then for a rugby championship without playing your club footy is very different.
One of the things that is obviously the global calendar comes into question. Like it seems like South Africa are this swing vote on many things in terms of how the game goes forward. But should they choose to join the Six Nations instead, it obviously leaves a big gap in terms of the Rugby Championship. You were mentioning Japan could fill that. It kind of makes a bit more sense as far as the logistics of the season and that dynamic, because you're not doing pre-season straight into an international window, which is a bit unusual anyway. But things like the summer series, the summer tours that have kind of dwindled, and that's one of the main focuses of the global calendar argument, is that there's nothing really accomplished by the summer tours a lot these days. But if they're not playing in the Rugby Championship anymore, then potentially touring places like New Zealand comes back in, which is something that they miss. Or New Zealand touring there.
And it opens the window up for other teams. Obviously, if South Africa tip the scales such that they become a de facto Northern Hemisphere team, then you have sort of not 6 but 5/4 top. No, sorry. Yeah, you have 5, 6 even. I'm all over the place. You have 6 top Northern Hemisphere teams / maybe 5 if you don't want to count Scotland sometimes, but they are there at the moment. And then you only have sort of the 3/4 down south. That creates its own new dynamic where actually you don't have the games to fill. Normally every November window or every summer tour, Ireland get to tour New Zealand, England get to tour Australia, Wales get to tour South Africa, France have this year off and they have to play games against the USA and Japan and that kind of stuff. But if South Africa move and become one of those northern teams, the balance does shift.
Unless Japan can hold their
but even so, it's just an extra top Northern Hemisphere team. It's an extra fixture to fill, and while you could bring tier 2 teams into that, it does open the door for sort of playing with those windows a little more. Like we've had our idea that we've long got over about the changing the November window into this tiered competition, which I think is a great idea, which I actually think it could happen now. I think it could happen. I think this autumn series might be a little nugget for them to experiment with the November window, and I think that's exactly what they should be doing. But as far as how the international game would look in that scenario, if the South Africans have joined the Pro 16, they might get into the Champions Cup, and then from there they might be well tempted to take down the Six Nations and all the financial incentives that are there. If that does take place, you have this very, very interesting dynamic both in Super Rugby and in Test Rugby. So in Test rugby, you've got a rugby championship, which is now currently 2 teams or 3 teams strong: New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina. Presumably, Japan and all of its money are going to want into that.
Yeah.
That's the natural move to make, and then you have question mark about your Fijis, your Samoas, your Tongas.
Do you do a
Can you throw
Pacific
them in?
Islander team, barbarian style?
Yeah.
Get them all in together potentially.
Maybe. Maybe.
Or you're hoping for a little Uruguay to make a step up,
No.
a significant step up.
Yeah.
USA, Canada, those guys are
Yeah,
there
but
too.
these are the questions that are going to be created by all of this.
Yeah.
The other dynamic is about the Jaguares.
Yeah, what's to be done with them?
Super Rugby. The Jaguares is a franchise that was created for Super Rugby, and now the whole thing is seemingly, if South Africa are leaving, South Africa was the conference they were paired with.
Yeah.
Maybe they could go over and keep going.
Do they send the Griquas and the Pumas and the Cheetahs to Super Rugby now?
I don't know. I think they're just sending the Cheetahs. But I actually think that Super Rugby needs to change fundamentally.
Yeah.
And I think this is the more interesting conversation about the potential implications of this. But in COVID time, we have now these Super Rugby competitions that were domestic, and they worked.
Yeah.
They kind of worked. Even Super Rugby AU, you got people got into it in terms of over in Australia. There was actually a chance for an Australian team to win something. And then you had the Super Rugby Aotearoa, which was absolutely brilliant and wouldn't need any improving.
No.
You could potentially do a Super Rugby AU with an island franchise, and you could do the Super Rugby Aotearoa as is. And then I don't know what the situation is with Argentina with the Jaguares.
Do they join the MLR?
There's a professional competition starting this year in South America involving a Uruguayan team and a Brazilian team and an Argentinian team. Now you could argue that from an Argentinian point of view, it's a bit of perhaps it's a step back.
Considering Argentina A tend to hose their way through.
Yeah, and not like they joined the Rugby Championship in 2012, then Super Rugby in 2015. They've gone strength to strength. They made World Cup semi-final.
Jaguares made the final of the Super Rugby.
Jaguares were in the final of Super Rugby last year. Exactly right. So there's all that kind of potential there. It's hard to know which way Argentina will go. But what I like as an idea is keeping everything domestic and having a Champions Cup style tournament.
Yeah.
Can we not have the best teams in Japan, the top would be the top 2 or the top 3 or however you want to arrange the tournament, the top few teams from Super Rugby AU, Super Rugby Aotearoa, the Japanese League, and perhaps even an Argentinian team as well, play a Champions Cup style tournament, perhaps post-season, especially if you have these condensed seasons. I think that might be the future. I think the Champions Cup format works so well in the Northern Hemisphere as a balance between domestic and international. Yeah. I think that's the future. I think that might be the way they go.
What it definitely is a shake-up.
Yes.
And it's a much needed one because Super Rugby was stagnating. The South African teams definitely are being enticed north with the carrot that is the money there. For sure, it leaves a vacuum. It leaves a hole. It's a change, a seismic change. But everyone's hands been forced by this COVID thing. Every union is struggling for money now. So these decisions have kind of been accelerated. And now, sure, for better or worse, it's going to be a Pro 16 next year.
It's the biggest shift to the professional game since its inception, I think.
Pretty true. Yeah, I think so.
So I think we're about to see all of that play out. We're about to see huge shifts in the global calendar. And while I think I will touch on the global calendar once more before the show ends, but I don't think it's going to happen. Mostly because they're not going to be able to arrange something that the unions will
agree to
find palatable in any way, because such a model doesn't exist.
Yes, and also I think it's folly as well.
Well, exactly.
It's just
a buzzword at this point, because there isn't actually a model that makes any sense whatsoever. So global calendar just is something that's said without ever understanding what it could be. Yeah. But I think that they will play with the test windows. They will play with the Rugby Championship, and who knows? What would really be great is an avenue for Tier 2 teams to come up. But that is perhaps a conversation for another day.
Yes, I think so. So with that, we will move on to our other news of the week. Final segment in this absolute marathon podcast that has been. I'm getting tired now as well myself.
How does Joe Rogan do it?
I don't know. But fair play to him. We're just things that are making news. The big sad news of the week is that Manu Tuilagi is out for 6 months with a torn Achilles, which is an injury that he sustained on a Tuesday night match at Franklin's Gardens, which they went on to win 34-14 anyway. why did they play him in that game?
Well, it's
why were they playing midweek games in the first place?
Yeah, that's the question. This is the world's most predictable catastrophe again.
Yeah.
Poor old Manu Tuolangi has no luck with the injuries, and England have always been weaker without him.
Yeah.
When he does eventually go, they're going to have to figure something else out, because usually he's the spark that brings them back whenever their form does dip.
It's true.
But yeah,
he's 29 years young now.
29, incredible.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about it. But it's obviously a bad injury for a great player. And it's not on Steve Diamond and Sale to explain why he was playing in this game and that game. They all had such a task to balance these squads with these hyped up fixtures, these packed in fixtures.
The only instance I've seen of it before this quick rotation is in the Junior World Cup, when they try and accelerate through that, and it causes the same problems. They have 4-day turnarounds and sluggish performances and injuries.
Yeah, you see it at the World Cup as well. Sometimes you see when, like, the classic example was the pool where all the tier 1, tier 2 sides got a win, and all of the defeats came after the short turnarounds for both Georgia, Fiji, and Uruguay. They all lost to one another after a short turnaround. Which is it's a nightmarish thing to do, and it inevitably led to an injury here. We talked about the Premiership earlier in the year, and this is it's gone on them, in my opinion. It
is. Well, sure, compare it to the Top Coutures, where they just said no, we'll knock the season on the head. For European qualification is as it stands, no bouclier is awarded. We'll just start again next year.
They looked at it and said we can't. They can't finish, and like the English looked at it and said, well, we can if we just pack in as many fixtures as possible, no stops, no postponed games, everything must be played, and we'll finish on this date. And even then, we're starting our new season in November, late November. Madness. But anyway, poor Manu, and listen, we wish him the best of health. We have unfortunate news to add to that, which is that Damien Penaud has suffered a tibiofibular sprain and will be sidelined for 6 to 8 weeks himself, which is going to rule him out of all this international action for the French.
Is terrible, because he's such a box office player. I am such a Damien Penaud fan, and that is no good. I'm a fan of Tuilagi and Penaud, so those are just some bad injury things. Then we have other sad news. We've kind of loaded the sad news at the top here. Semi Kunatani, one of our favourite Fijian assets.
He played both in the Sevens team and is very capable of playing in the back row for 15's team.
Yeah, for sure. But his contract with Cast fell through as a result of a failed medical.
I don't know what that's about, but that's
so he's now a free agent.
He's now a free agent, and he is going to be a part, I suspect, of the Fijian squad for the upcoming autumn game. So no games in the bank for him. And I would love to see someone pick him up. I think he's a really
he's
good
an asset for anyone.
I think he's actually a smart get if someone can do it right now. But obviously, whatever's wrong with him failing a medical, that
obviously is a caveat to attach to it.
But
he's no longer with Cast. That much we know. In other news, Cast have many positive cases as well, wasn't there?
That's right. Cast have been late.
Speaking of failing medicals. Then in more positive news, I guess, depending on your perspective, but Cecil Africa, exciting young former Sevens star, has joined the San Diego Legion in the MLR.
That's such awesome news.
That is great news, and him and obviously they acquired the great Harlequin.
Chris Robshaw
is going to San Diego Legion as well after playing his 300th
I didn't know that, actually.
He's gone to
the San Diego Legion.
That's right. So they'll make up.
They made the final the last time out, didn't they?
Didn't quite get it.
Seattle Seawolves,
who have dominated the comp since its inception. But it's exciting to see more marquee players go and join that league. The more that league becomes legitimate, the more we can talk less about global calendars and talk more about kind of like 3 different pods of it. Like, I just think it makes more sense for the thing to work on a
lines of longitude, not lines of latitude.
Exactly. It makes more sense to stick in your time zone. So for TV and things, it's good to see a legit professional competition over on that.
The other good thing is it's exciting to see Cecil Africa play some 15s, especially when he might be one of the better players in it. He could light things up. He played as a de facto 10 in a Sevens team, which makes it a curious dilemma where you put him in a 15s team.
Usually wing is the answer.
15 for Cecil, he's a great boot on him.
He does have a great boot on him. Yeah,
I think Cecil as a rangy 15.
I like it a lot. Because he'll get on the ball a bit more often.
I think he could be very, very good. He's a great passer of the ball as well.
And there's that little bit more like with the MLF the football thing when Zlatan Ibrahimovic goes over to play football in the States. There's a little bit more time. Yeah, a little bit more space.
Yeah,
so there's a little bit more scope for some lovely
honestly,
tries.
Like for all the guys you've heard joining up there, Manonus and Basteros, and you know, I'm not sure if Manonu went, but Bastero went, and there's a few other heads. Cecil Africa has the potential to be the most exciting player in that whole league.
For sure,
he could tear that league to shreds with his talent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a super exciting acquisition. I'm dying actually. It's in March of next year, but really do not miss the MLR next year. It should be great, and I believe it's all being streamed
on Facebook,
free to air on Facebook,
and other streaming things.
So
yeah, that's good.
So that's fantastic.
No excuse for not watching it. And then in other news, we mentioned it earlier. Training halted at Munster as one player tests positive. Obviously, people isolating and stuff, trying to do things by the book. And then other COVID-related news is Michael Cheika, who the Argentinians had recruited. Ledesma wanted him in as an advisor for the backs role. Obviously, he's now a free agent. He was due to join up with them, but due to COVID travel restrictions, was grounded and will now wait until the team comes to Brisbane to join up with them there.
Grant, so could be an interesting one. Checks with the Wallabies.
Checks with the Pumas.
Checks with the Pumas. Sorry, checks. We've seen checks with the Wallabies. It did not end well. But it had some good moments.
And we are Cheika fans. As Leinster fans, we are indebted to the man. He gave us a bit of bite, gave us our first bit of silverware proper. He's definitely a proven coach.
Yeah, he's a good head. He's a good head to have in there for sure.
And considering they were floundering a little under Ledesma, they were making some wrong calls. They certainly got a lot wrong going into the World Cup last year. They didn't capitalise on the Jaguares' great form at all. Didn't really play to their strengths at all. So it'll be nice to get a bit of experience coaching in there and see what they can do when the Rugby Championship rolls around sooner than you'd expect. And
finally we're just going to wrap up with the two squads that have been named
as we mention it, or as we shoot now. There probably will be more when we upload, but Wales and England have named their training squads.
Ahead of the autumn series and the wrapping up of the Six Nations as well. 12 uncapped players in Eddie Jones's squad for England.
That's a lot.
It's pretty exciting. I mean,
one caveat with the England one is that it doesn't include any of the four final teams from the Premiership yet. They haven't been included yet, so obviously that is subject to change.
Getting Alex Dombrandt in there from Harlequins is massive. He's that back row competition is extraordinary. And another guy I would give a shout out to is Ollie Thorley from Gloucester, who I've been a fan of for ages. I'd love to see him get some game time.
The other two I singled out were Nathan Earl, who you highlighted earlier for Bristol, very very impressive player, and
Ben Earl is in Bristol.
Oh, Ben
Nathan
Earl, sorry,
Nathan.
Oh no, I'm wrong then. Sorry, but Lewis Ludlow was the other one I was thinking as well. I can't believe he's uncapped, but he's been very very good for a few years.
Well, that's the problem with this back row, man. This back row is just
Nathan
insane.
Earl the Sarri.
But it's a chock-a-blocked English team as always, and they're going to have more men to add to it. But just mainly just to be very excited to see Ollie Thorley included, along with Alex Dombrandt, who I think will be huge additions for them. And just important to note, it's no surprise, but Cipriani and Alex Good and Danny Cipriani, no room, never any room. They're getting on now anyway, so it's never going to happen. You're never going to see it, folks.
I don't quite
Alex Good is so good.
Alex Good was fantastic, and he slotted in at 10 a lot. I suspect that Eddie Jones just doesn't like him. That is the long and the short of it. He's just not getting in because he doesn't like him. Because he's picked George Furbank, the Northampton guy, and he's not as good.
No way.
By any stretch of the imagination, he's just not as good.
It really is a curiosity. But
and similarly, actually, who the undroppable, what is his name? God, where is he gone? George Ford, the undroppable, is ever there, despite Leicester being a basket case.
I don't know if Ford is Ford's going to start at 10 for them. I
know they like their forward Farrell axis and all that. It's been a tried and true one. I just don't quite understand what more Cipriani can do, because Gloucester have a pack that is very often outmatched, and he still manages to make things happen.
He doesn't want him.
Just doesn't want him. But that is the dynamic with England. As with Wales, they have 7 uncapped players in their squad, which is fewer.
The headline maker was Callum Sheedy from Bristol, who was Irish, English and Welsh qualified.
But he's going to get capped for Wales now. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, so he's in from Bristol. Josh McLeod in as a back rower is great as an uncapped player. And And then awesome as well to see Louis Rees-Sammet, the other Gloucester flyer.
Box office. He's a really exciting player. Josh McLeod as well is a really good back row forward. Had a decent game for Scarlets the other day. And the other one I held as well is Yohan Lloyd, is a 19-year-old fullback from Bristol as well, another exciting game breaker, and he is up for his debut as well. So yeah, as ever with Wales, some exciting talent there.
Exciting talent, and yeah, we're looking forward to tucking into Wales as well as the Six Nations restarts, and England. We're going to get to know these teams again, and the Autumn Nations Cup coming up should promise us to be a lot of fun with an absolutely brutal group with Ireland, England, Wales, and Georgia. Because
Georgia.
World Rugby is like, we'll extend an olive branch, but not really. There's like loads of thorns in it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way with Georgia.
And then the other group of France, Scotland, Fiji, and Italy. It's safe to say there's a little more of a sporting chance for the tier 2 sides in that group.
For sure.
That's all to come. And listen, we're really looking forward to an action-packed, what promises to be a super action-packed couple of months. And the rugby is restarting, and it's jam-packed full of fixtures necessitated by the 6-month hiatus, but this accounts for how long this show has been and how long we've been going. Forever, it seems, at this stage. This might be our longest ever show.
It might be. It's up there anyway. It's definitely a marathon one, but if you've stuck with it all, we love you. We appreciate it. Thank you. You have more energy, more stamina than we do.
And we will be back. We will be back next week. We'll be talking about there's some tier 2 games going ahead. We'll be reflecting on Bledisloe. We'll be looking ahead to either a Premiership or a European final. I'm not even sure at this stage.
European first, but
we'll be looking forward to all of that stuff, and the games come thick and fast from there as Test Rugby heats up. So I'm excited. I think you're all excited. If you enjoy our stuff, if you want to catch more of us as the season progresses, please subscribe down below. Absolutely like the videos, share them if you can.
Ring the bell if you want to be notified, but mainly leave a few comments. I think
leave a few comments.
We do like the chat down below, so let us know what you think. If you have any opinions, any things you're excited about, any notes on what we just said.
If you'd like us to do a 4-hour podcast next time. If you like the video, if you want to see us 6 hours.
Yeah, we'll just live stream for 12 hours.
Every like is an hour. Every like is an hour added to the show.
No, maybe not. But with that, before we get too silly, we are going to sign off. So see you next time, folks.
Bye-bye.
Wow, you're up.
Oh, no need.
Love to see
it.
One and done.
That was beautiful.
Excellent.